Right. I think we're almost about set to get going, aren't we?
I think we are, Matt. So, I've got a whole bunch of notes. I'm prepared. I'm sure you are as well.
Hmm.
But first, if, for those who may not know, let's cover what is KYC, what is doxing, in case they don't understand exactly what those terms mean.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk me through your thoughts in terms of what you think it is? I mean, KYC obviously we know is know your customer. For anybody who doesn't know what
Right?
that stands for, um, and doxing is effectively when someone hands over their information that tells you exactly who they are. That's first name, surname, sometimes potentially address. It's a way of just giving people information that typically you would have in any other registered company that you can look up online.
Correct. And yeah, I would agree. And the different levels of KYC. Now, that's one thing, and that's going into the debate side. But yeah, everybody has a different definition of KYC. I mean, when you open a bank account, you KYC. If you create a central exchange wallet, you do a KYC. Other things don't require KYC. So it's really interesting. And then within that realm, there are different levels of security. I mean, does it require a social security number or just a driver's license? Does it require a physical address or not? There's a
Hmm.
lot of different levels to that KYC process.
Yes, there is, and typically, especially in real world scenarios, it is legislation led, right? It's an anti money laundering setup that avoids customers being able to take advantage of businesses.
Correct. Agreed. And it's one of those, it keeps accountability. And I think that's one of the biggest things we're here discussing today is what level is appropriate security and accountability and transparency? And where does that become a risk? And when it does it become a reward? What is that balance? And I think that's really the critical thing we're going after here today.
Yes, I agree. I think it is. And the discussion is going to be, should protocols in particular the space that we operate in DeFi, should they A KYC and B doxed, or should the person at the top be doxed, right? The person that
Right.
makes the decisions, the one that created the protocol, is it a necessity for you to have their information?
Okay. So I guess let's start at the beginning. So, Matt, now you're over in the UK, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, have you ever doxed or KYC'd publicly to the DeFi space?
No.
Okay. And that's fair. And so that's one of those things. But I'm curious in Great Britain,
Hmm.
what are the levels of KYC? What do you consider an appropriate level of KYC that, let's say, to open a business, something like that? What would be required?
Right. So this is where immediately you and I are going to have a difference in opinion because
Of course we are. That's
um,
why it's a
I,
debate.
I to register a business, I don't consider it a KYC to the government, for example. I consider that to be something different. KYC, I believe, is primarily and almost entirely an interaction between customer and business. So it's something that a business is going to implement in order to ensure that the customer is going to be not going to be A, money laundering, B, can have access to their account if they need access to an account that might be closed off for some reason, and or is going to be unscrupulous and perhaps try and take advantage of that particular company, be it by way of not paying for something, avoiding paying, delay payment, whatever that might be.
Okay. So you're looking at KYC to the customer different than KYC to the government or to whatever federal entity that exists.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the
Okay.
different levels of that, it really depends on what you're trying to set up. As a business, typically you've got to give an address, you've got to give your name. Actually, the UK, it's surprisingly easy to set up a limited company. You don't even have to give your own physical address. A lot of the time, you can give a PO box address, um, and the whole point of setting up a limited company is that it is limited, right, in liability,
Right.
and we just don't have particularly stringent rules at the minute. They're getting more strict, and the UK is catching up. But similarly, in the US, there are some states where I don't even believe you need to give any details over to start a company, right, or to go through. Take Wyoming, for example. If you look up the rules in Wyoming in terms of what's necessary, you'd be surprised at how limited information you need to hand over in order to start operating with other people's information, for example.
Right. And it really comes down to the type of company. So the US is very critical on certain types of companies, and that's how it kind of breaks them down. If you're dealing with funding of any kind, then yes, it's a very deep KYC process. But if you're starting like a lawn mowing company, yeah, you can just go out and mow somebody's lawn. That's not a problem. And there are different levels of that. Now, Down Home Crypto is an LLC corporation. We actually started a corporation when I started the channel and started doing this. And to do that, yes, we did have to give our identification, our driver's license, social security numbers. From there, get a tax EIN number, because essentially we'll be having subcontractors, things like that, funds moving in and out. So all of that had to be registered, both not only as a business, but also as an LLC. So two separate entities that coincide with each other.
Right. So let's start with the first question. I'll fire off.
Fire it off. What do you got?
Why do you believe KYC in the DeFi space should be a necessity? And why should protocol leads be put in a position where they ought to dox themselves in order to create the kind of protocols that we see in the space today?
Okay. And that's a pretty broad question. I mean, there's a lot, I got a lot of little questions within that broad question. Putting it very simply, I think the simple fact, if I'm going to give somebody money, and I'm not going to walk down the street and see some guy in a corner has a flyer, says, hey, read my flyer, hand me $5,000. I'll meet you back here every Tuesday to give you 1% per day. Okay, sound good? Yeah, none of us are going to go for that. But that's essentially what we're saying. If we don't know that person, who they are, what they are, then, are we really going to trust those kind of people with our funds? And so I believe there does need to be a level of transparency and honesty, because we are trusting them with our funds. And so we wouldn't go out and give just anybody this cash money and trust that, oh yeah, Bob the builder, he's going to come back here and he'll give me a 2x in 30 days. No, we want to know who that person is. I mean, the basic concept is, in my opinion, very unrealistic.
Right. But we also recognize that DeFi stands for decentralized finance. And at what point do we start to then move away from the decentralized aspect of the space in order to justify having people KYC or dox in the name of you are taking money from me for a service, and never a service, or more often than not a service that is promised, right? It is often made very clear that it is going to be something that is experimental. We might be able to offer you this back. And crucially, it isn't money per se, it's crypto. We're never handing fiat over to these protocols, we're handing over cryptocurrency. And so that adds an additional layer to the process. You've taken the decision to take your fiat, put it into a centralized exchange, which absolutely should have KYC because of the volume it takes and the size of it. And, by virtue of the fact that it is centralized, you then move it into a wallet, and you then choose to interact with another wallet in order to invest somewhere on the basis that you believe they are going to be able to give you the kind of returns they say they will.
Okay. And that's a great drawdown there. And you make some very interesting points right there. Is, first of all, like you said, it's not money, it's crypto. And that's one that I would have to respectfully disagree, because to get crypto, at some point in time, you must sacrifice money. So in the end, and in the future financial system where this world is going, I do believe that cryptocurrency will be the baseline of most financial operations within the world. Now, that might be 10 or 20, 30 years down the road. But I still think looking at it not as money is kind of doing a disservice to the entire crypto space and the technology in which we're trying to move towards. So I would have to respectfully disagree on that one, Matt.
It's interesting that you use the word sacrifice. It's subliminally that's in your mind, because there is an acceptance that when you are moving your fiat into crypto, it is in part a sacrifice. There are no guarantees when you enter into this space, right? With any speculative asset, you're going to have the same problems. When you shop online, though, for example, if we do take a traditional format, you're never checking who it is that you are, or more often than not, you're not checking who it is that you're interacting with, who controls the money, where that money's going. However, I accept that, of course, especially the law protects you against somebody not sending, what you're trying to purchase effectively. But you are still interacting with people that you don't know. They're not doxed. They're not KYC'd per se. Okay, the people at the top are, but you're still taking that risk on a day-to-day basis. And now we move into this experimental state that we're in here. And I wonder if by trying to get people to KYC and Doxx, you begin to, in some way, suppress some of the innovation that might come out.
Okay, and that's a great topic. And I want to back up a quick step here,
Please
because
do.
you brought up a great point there is, like you said, when we interact online, we don't always know where we're getting that product from. And I'll use eBay or Amazon, either one of those great ones. But eBay is the best one here because we're actually going out there and we're buying from another person. We don't know that person. We don't know their name. We don't know anything else. But that person has to be some level of KYC or responsibilities taken by eBay as the central company for that person. If something goes wrong, they will step in. They have their bank account. They have their information. So there is still some level of even that anonymous person that I'm purchasing something from. If they do something nefarious, there is still a recourse that they have to answer to because of a level of KYC. Now, do I have to know it? No, I do not. I do not think that's required. I don't think I need to know everybody within a project. But I think the people who I'm sending my money through, if it's the platform of eBay or through a DApp or something like that, then yes, wherever I send that person who's going to be accountable for the funds I'm sending does need to have a level of transparency and responsibility for those funds.
So who then becomes a responsible middleman within crypto?
That is the interesting part, because that's when you start to merge the whole DeFi versus central exchange. So now you're talking the centralized versus decentralized. And I think that's the very blurry line, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there has to be a certain level of transparency, of KYCs, of just saying, okay, the founders, the people who have signatures to the Gnosis safe, coders who have direct access to the code they're going to be operating, that needs to be KYC, not to me, but at least to the founders and the team, because that team is the one that I am believing in on their roadmap. Whether it makes it or not, I accept that responsibility. It's an experiment, and I get that totally. But I am going in with good faith that they are not going to run. They're not going to just grab the money and run. And so that's where that level of transparency needs to be, is the ones that actually have capabilities to sign the Gnosis safe, to do things along those lines.
It's interesting that, again, and I don't mean to nitpick on this, and it's going to feel like I'm being mean, but the wording such as trust, you're going to trust your money with somebody, you're going to trust your crypto with someone. Sean Cow, for example, raises an interesting point in which he says no, he sees his crypto as fiat, and I think to understand where I'm coming from with this particular argument, in a way I have to push back on that and say I don't think it is fiat. The second you transfer from fiat into crypto, it is no longer a dollar value. Yes, it has a worth to it, but you always have to be prepared for that, whatever value it is, to devalue, and very, very quickly. Even stable coins can depeg, as we've seen in this space, right? And we've seen a catastrophic depegging of a stable coin that was from a fully doxed founder. It didn't stop the problem from happening. So what do we see KYC as being in that respect then? When we talk about KYC, is it a proactive implementation of something that secures you as an investor, or is it a retrospective issue that we're talking about?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just caught in my thoughts.
No, you're fine, because I know I'm going to draw a blank during time to time, and a lot of people are throwing up great questions in both and great comments, and I love it. Please keep them coming, because we will definitely share them here. So here's the one thing. Let's back up to the very, very beginning, because to me, you kind of jumped in the middle of this debate. I want to start back at the beginning just a little bit.
Let's do it.
So as a content creator, part of my job is to do the research, just like you. You do the same thing. You do the research, but at what point does your research capabilities run out? If you run into a blank wall of who are these people? What is their past? What have they done? Is this business model may look great because they print it up on ChatGPT. Does that mean it's theirs? Does it mean it's valid? No, it doesn't. To me, that's where KYC is. It lets me look beyond just what they printed on the screen. That some guy walked up to me on the street with a flyer, said, "Here, invest in this and you'll get rich." No, this lets me go a little bit further and find out who that person on the street is. Do they have a reputation? Is it somebody that, yes, I can back? And like you said, trust, because in this world, I think there is a level of trust. If we're handing over, whether it's crypto or fiat, however you choose to look at it, we are giving someone else something we possess.
Hmm.
When we do that, there has to be a level of trust. Otherwise, we would just throw it away, wouldn't we? I mean, it would be worthless. So we're giving them something of value, however you want to look at that, to do something with in hopes it does better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're not you're giving them something and allowing them to be experimental with it is what I would say first and foremost to that.
Okay.
I would argue that you are buying into the experimental DeFi space, and therefore you are, and I think sacrificing in this instance is a good word to use. You are sacrificing your crypto for someone else to experiment within the space and hopefully crack the code on how we can return money at far higher levels than we do in everyday life, right? In the real world.
Right.
Does KYC give you the kind of background that is often relevant to the space we are operating in? Would be one of my questions.
Okay.
Because you will find a lot of business owners decide that they really like the space. They might have invested here or there. They've sat behind anonymous wallets that you're not going to be able to track. They might have been part of projects with various alt accounts in various spaces that you're going to have no idea exist. And the persona that they have within this particular space might be entirely different to the persona that they have on in the real world. So the information that you're going to be taking from a traditional and typical KYC is flawed when it comes to them putting it into a space that is totally alien to what you're looking at.
Okay. And I would definitely agree with that. It is a night and day difference on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still a lot of things that are very similar. If we look at just general trading market, whether you're trading in crypto or you're trading in the forex exchange or commodities, things like that, a lot of the parameters still exist on all three realms. So there are variations, absolutely. A lot of things can have different effects on one versus another. But the basic concept of investing cryptocurrency or fiat or whatever you wish into one of these exchanges to trade up or down still has a lot of similarities to it. So,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it is a different world, and I would agree with that. But at the same time, if somebody has a background of being nefarious or just constantly crashing businesses over and over and over again, is that really someplace in which I would want to risk in this experimental world my crypto or fiat money to, in hopes that, hey, maybe they found religion, maybe they suddenly got smarter, they went to night school, I don't know, whatever they did. But if their track record shows that they continuously just gamble, is that really what we're doing? I mean, gambling, I can gamble myself, man. I get slot machine. Here we go. But the whole concept here is, especially smaller investors like myself, where to me, $100 is a lot. So if I'm investing that or putting it out there for an experiment, I want to have as much understanding in not only the project, but the people running the project who are making those decisions.
Sure, but we can see in this space that there are protocol leaders that are doing exactly what you've just described, fully doxed, KYC'd. You can look up their address, and there's nothing stopping them.
Right.
So what does KYC do if not just provide you with a full sense of security? It's a blanket that allows you to say, I've done my due diligence, and I can now use some information bias to confirm what I already want to do, which is put money into this particular protocol. Now, there are going to be examples where you might find something that is, crazy about a person's personality or previous business experience or what they might have done a few years prior with other people's money that's going to put you off it entirely. But I would hazard a guess that if in 3 months' time they're running a protocol that is churning out X amount of percentage a day compounded and people are telling you that they're taking thousands of dollars a week, a lot of people are still going to circle back to look at it because effectively that's what wins, not the person sitting behind it, but the returns that people ultimately are going to be getting from the space.
Okay, and that's a great topic, and this is what I've been waiting to tackle. So I'm really trying to figure out the angle I want to go after this one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, you said if somebody did something in the past nefarious, you went and you're analyzing that project, that may turn you off. And you say, you know what, I don't want to get into it. That's okay, because the experimentation that we're in right now, a lot of these projects, we don't have a history of. All we have is what they've done, their KYC in the past, whether it be businesses, things like that. And so to jump say, well, yeah, but 3 months later, after they've proven themselves, then we'll circle back. Hey, that sounds like a reasonable expectation. But to just FOMO into something because it looked great on a piece of paper is all against what we talk about. We don't
Can I
want to FOMO.
interject? Can I
Sure.
interject for a second?
Please.
I don't mean prove themselves to be a success. I simply mean that the protocol is giving people money. A protocol giving people money does not equal a successful protocol, right?
Right.
I think we probably both agree on that.
Oh, yeah.
This space operates in large part on Ponzi-nomics. So therefore, you can be quote unquote successful for quite a long period of time before it collapses. So someone can still be nefarious, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to name and shame people,
Right.
but I'm thinking of a rather large protocol that has consistently promised things that it has not delivered on. It's consistently had large amounts of money come into it, primarily based on the marketing that they come at this space with. It slowly begins to fail. They move to the next phase of what they're doing. They get a large amount of money in. It slowly begins to fail, so on and so forth. And to me, that is just a slow rug, right? All they're doing, as far as I'm concerned, is slow, and I'm sure you had this on your agenda to talk about. It's a slow, taking of the money, and even though that person is doxed and KYC'd, there is very little we can do about it.
Okay, so I would have to respectfully argue I would not say that is a slow rug. I would say that is the protocol. That's the way it's built. That's, if you've done research, you can visualize that once you're experienced and you understand this, that is going to happen. I define a rug more as, okay, everybody put their money in the first week. All of a sudden, somebody cashed it out, ran from Mexico. They're gone. But as you said earlier, and you argued, this is an experimental space. So if we invest in something and it lasts 3, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, whether it's a Ponzi-nomic scheme setup or not, that's part of the experiment, is can they manage that before it bleeds to death? So I would disagree that is not in my definition of a rug. That is a long slow bleed to death. Absolutely. It's miserable. And if you're not first in, then you're going to be the liquidity for other people getting out.
But let me ask you
Sure.
this, right? Okay, we keep using this word experimental. Let's take that off the table for the moment.
Okay.
At what point then, through, because we're talking about KYC and doxing, at what point are we then going to say, well, this person has to become ultimately responsible for continually doing the same pattern over and over again? And I can see some of the comments. No, it isn't safe, Moon, but you guys can continue to guess.
We're not going to. I'm not going to name them. Projects and beat them up. We're not here for that, guys. We're here to debate, and we're not going to trash anybody. We're not going to go try and slit throats. That's not why we're here. We're here to get this information out there. So, yeah, you guys can talk all you like, but we're not going to spread it.
This particular project, it is a pattern of behavior that starts to creep in, and it has also been described by those people as, well, we got it wrong. We need to go back to the drawing board and try and do it better. Right. So are we not then just allowing them to have a wider scope of excuses the minute that they are KYC'd and doxed? Well, you know who I am. You've seen my face. You know where I live. I'm a registered company. I can just hold my hands up and say, you know what? The experiment failed. It didn't last longer than 6 months. I can only apologize. I'll come back trying to do better next time.
Absolutely. And that's the great thing is now, because they are KYC, they are doxed. When they do come back, we know how that person is. And we say, you know what? Nah, we tried that time before. Second time, we gave you a risk with a little bit. Third time, hell no, I ain't going to do it. So by having that KYC and doxx actually gives us the opportunity to know who that person is. Now, if they're completely anonymous, they change their profile picture, they pick a new name, jump on Discord. Hey, a brand new project you've never heard of, you've never dealt with. Now it's going to release this new thing, when really it's the same people. So in the end, I feel that you just proved my point that KYC gives us a benefit to know who the good players are and the bad ones are, who to shun, and who to say, hey, he might have a chance. Okay, let's give this guy a chance. He's new. He didn't have a lot of background. I get that, but a new face, a new idea. Let's try it. You get the same guy coming back with the same, regurgitating the same crap every day. Hell no. We're like, yeah, go play in traffic. We're done with you.
But we've had people do that, and successfully.
Yes.
So the question then is KYC, at what point are we starting to say, well, KYC is beginning to equal legitimacy? Does it equal legitimacy? Is that what we're saying? That if somebody is doxed in KYC, they are far more legitimate than someone who is not?
So here comes down to the definition of legitimacy. This is why it's a debate because everything is there. When you talk legitimacy, are you talking legitimacy of the honesty of that individual or of the project and survivability and profitability of the project itself? How are you defining it?
And therein lies the problem in KYC, because you're only getting one piece of information, and that's the person's name and a background search that you might be able to do, right?
Right.
I am saying that, are we not in danger of drawing a parallel of legitimacy between a KYC person and their project, and not someone who is not or someone who's not KYC'd and it not being a successful project? I mean, there are successful projects out there that, and I'm not going to name, well, I will name it. A question was posed to me today, and it was a very smart question. Would Bitcoin be as successful as it is, and therefore would the entire crypto market have boomed in the way that it did if Satoshi Nakamoto was doxed?
That's an interesting question. And it's one of those, would it or would it not? I believe it still would, since it started out essentially in a gaming platform and environment and was adopted in that world. I could absolutely see it being there. Now, would it have exploded to the level it is today? And I don't know. I really don't know, because it's one of those guessing what could the future be? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. And that's one of the most dangerous things, but also the most interesting, where there's a lot of rabbit holes and a lot of parallel universes we could go into. And that's one of those. At the same time, let me ask you, out of any other crypto on the planet besides Bitcoin, just lost my thought. I had it up here in a question. What other? Sorry, go ahead.
No, after you. I can ask a question while you're thinking of it, if you like.
Go for it.
One of the things that I was going to say is that, when it comes to Bitcoin, for example, we're taking the first one and the very top of the heap. There, we are entrusting that the person who created it is not going to sell however many Bitcoin they have in their own private wallet, right? We assume they're not going to sell it. We trust they're not going to sell it, and we are entrusting that Bitcoin will continue to increase in value at some stage without them selling their tokens. So we have put all of our trust and almost an entire, a multi-billion-dollar market in the hands of someone who we don't know.
Right. So
yet what we want to do is then force other people to do what that person hasn't.
Okay. So let me ask you, what gives you the idea that they're not going to sell? That maybe they're not sitting on a pile of them and they're just waiting to sell them off and buy an island or something. I don't know. Small country.
What gives me the idea that they won't?
Right.
Was that the question? You don't.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. That's the point. It's a leap of faith.
Faith.
So far that leap of faith has been successful, though, right? That particular undoxed, non-KYC'd individual who created this token hasn't tanked it. It's been very successful, and for the most part, anybody that likes anything about crypto has at some point, or wants to at some point, own some Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And we all want Bitcoin, preferably big piles of it would be great.
Right.
And that's the thing. So once again, now let's look at this in the aspect of time. Keep in mind, we're looking back years in time. Now, if we back up to that point in time, what was it worth then? What was the value? What was the proposition? How much were people buying it for at that point in time? Were they asked to put $5,000 to start up Bitcoin?
Right.
No, they weren't. So that's
Agreed.
a big thing there.
Agreed. Which circles me back to my original question: was the value of that particular token not almost entirely in its anonymity?
No, I believe the biggest value in that token was the fact it did not require funds from other people to start that particular token. I think it started on its own. It generated and spread through the hard work of the team without asking for money, without saying, hey, buy into this project, buy this NFT and I'll give you this. That didn't exist back then. It's wholly started on, we're going to do this and we're going to try and make it adoptable. And that's what they did. And it built up its own organic growth, not from funds from investors like me and you, or people here betting on an experiment, but because the hard work of the team and the identity of the person unknown, that what they put forth to get it adopted. And then we slowly adopted ourselves.
Sure. And I accept that pushback, and I think it's valid. And it does then bring into question, well, all of the protocols, or most of the protocols that we operate with, are requiring some form of new money coming in. And one of the topics of conversation that I wanted to bring up, and I can already see people in the chats talking about it, is it not more important to rather than KYC people, ensure that contracts, for example, that all of these run by are immutable, that we move towards ensuring that there is less control over what the contracts or the protocol can do, and we can look transparently at what that protocol has coded in the background and who might have done it, and make an informed decision on that, rather than just, oh well, that's John Doe from down the road.
Okay, and that's a great point, and that's a couple things I wanted to bring up to you. And so I think we're definitely going on the right avenue here. So first of all, let's back up a half a step.
Sure.
So when we start talking about KYC, okay, so we're debating right now, should the founders and team members be KYC? Okay, that's our big debate right here. But let me throw one at you, because if you are the person to hire a coder, this is your idea, but maybe you're not a coder. Maybe you have to bring other skill sets out, because I don't think there are many people out there who can run a full project and code the full project and do everything top to bottom. They're going to need outside help. Do you feel it's required that that coder should have some accountability to the team owners and founders before they hire him in and say, yeah, here's my Ferrari, take it out for a test drive, see how you do? Should they be KYC'd or doxxed to the team and the founders?
It's a trick question, because of course my answer should be yes. I am also of the firm belief that this space can operate anonymously, with good actors at the helm driving, provided there are enough good actors who are doing their due diligence in informing people of the right stuff, not the wrong stuff. And that's where I come at KYC from, is that I personally believe that KYC, as we understand it right now within the space, doesn't do much for the space other than give you a false sense of security. There are plenty of KYC spaces out there. There are plenty of businesses that do KYC for DeFi, for crypto. Some mainly do meme coins, for example, that only come out, once every couple of years. They last a week and then disappear, right? But
Right.
they KYC them. But there are others that also do doxing and KYCing internally of team members that can slip through the net. Those processes have at times been circumvented, and you or I, as a normal average investor, would have no idea it's happened.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the problem lies. I think that the problem lies in not sharing that particular piece of information. We don't want to damage the protocol's reputation, so we're not going to say this person slipped through the net and they had someone who wasn't the person that they thought they were working on their project. Well, why not? We don't have to name the person. You don't have to dox them. You don't have to put their face out there. But why are we not coming forward and saying, well, actually, this particular protocol did have someone slip through the net? Why and how?
Okay. So now that brings about a great question, because if you're talking anonymity and then you're at the same time trying to hold these people accountable, how do you know you can hold that person accountable if it's Bob the Builder today and tomorrow it's Tuesday Travis and then Wednesday it's Wendy? You don't know who you're actually dealing with. So without some level of KYC or doxing, there's no way to take that level of guilt or nefarious activity and hook it to that person, because there is no one to hook it to. I mean, we don't know who they are.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Have you ever seen my face?
No, I have not.
Do you have any idea of what I might be called in the real world beyond maybe the first 4 letters?
Maybe Matthew or Bob, or no, not a clue.
Right. And do you enjoy our conversations and the Q&As that we host within the space?
Very much so. It's my favorite Q&As, my favorite channel to watch.
Right. Well, thank you.
Or listen to, I should say.
I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but I appreciate it. My point
I'm being honest,
being is, thank you. My point being is that you enjoy our space and you enjoy the Q&As, yet you don't know anything about me. You not knowing anything about me hasn't hindered my ability to give you a good product, and it hasn't hindered your ability to enjoy it.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever asked me for money?
Yes.
When?
You have 4 NFTs that you're going to be giving away today
Yes, I
that you
do.
paid for.
Yes, I did. But you didn't ask me for money. See, I'm not investing in you. I'm investing
No.
in my community, in the
Fine.
people out there watching us and enjoying us.
Mhm.
If you came to me and said, "Hey, Jim, I want you to invest in this. I need $5,000."
Mhm.
First thing I'd say is, "Love you to death, but you know what? There's the door later."
Right.
Because I'm not going to blindly follow anyone or anything, especially if I don't know 'em. Now, if I can see them on camera, if I've talked to them and they say that I might be a little more interested, like, okay, what's going on? What's happening? What do you got going? And how can I be a part of this? But if somebody just blindly shows up, says, "Hey, give me 5 grand, I'll make you rich." Like, yeah, no, hit the road, Jack. So I think there's a different level over there versus the personality and learning and growing together is very different from dealing with funds, whether imaginary, fiat, or crypto, irrelevant.
Mhm.
There's members of my family I love to death, but there's ones that I wouldn't loan them $5 because I'll never get it back. There's just no way. And I know that. It's
Right.
like, yeah, okay, here's $10. I might as well burn it because I'll never see it. I know that. So I think that's where the line comes into place is depending on what exactly you're getting from that person can be defined on what level of trust you need to have within that person.
And that's a fair pushback, and I can agree with that. Yes. You know, you don't give over $500, $5 or $1 blindly to anybody, especially if they're promising you something by way of money in return, right?
Right.
So I can accept that. But then let me ask you, and someone has already brought this up in the chat. Again, it was something that I wanted to cover, but I'm glad they did. How often have we seen in this space that a KYC'd protocol lead or dev has been successfully brought to justice?
As of yet, none that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are some that I don't know everything. I'm not even going to say I do or that I know all the different worlds in the crypto space. I have not personally heard of any one that I've been involved in that was brought to justice in any way, shape, or form. Now, I know of several that have been shunned by the community. It's like, yeah, no. And they just kind of fade away into the woodwork.
Mhm. So it's safe to say KYC as a measure of security for the funds you're giving the people that might do something nefarious hasn't worked.
Has not worked in retaliation to a nefarious act. Now, has it worked to deter people from going back into another nefarious project with the same people?
Right. Yes, I'm sure it has. Yes, it has. But we're not talking about a deterrent here, right?
No.
KYC is not meant to be a deterrent for any future endeavors after you've already done something bad. KYC is designed to be a protective measure that allows you to legally go after somebody who might have done something nefarious with your money. The problem is, we haven't seen that happen within this space. I'm sure there are times where people have threatened to go after someone and managed. In fact, there have been people that have managed to recover funds. But as a successful kind of legal approach to someone who is KYC'd or doxed, to my mind, I don't think we've seen it at all. So, in its current format, could we not then agree that KYC is fundamentally flawed? It's not doing what it should do, which is stopping those bad actors from getting away with it even the one time.
And see, I don't think we're at that level in the DeFi space of utilizing KYC for actual punishment aspects. But I do believe we are in the space where we can utilize those KYCs as deterrents for us investors to know those people. So I would have to disagree on that one. That I agree and disagree both, because yes, we have not seen it work for a justice manner, but we have seen it utilized to avoid those as a deterrent for the investors to stay away from. So I think there's multiple uses for KYC. Do I think it's a one problem fix all? No, absolutely not. I don't think one exists. I do think it does give a little bit of that warning of, hey, these are the nefarious actors. Now, like Austin's saying, is, hey, they just get a new alias and go that route. And yeah, that's a big one. And that's why I think what type of KYC or who did the KYC can also have a drastic difference on that level of security and who exactly you're dealing with.
Right. Have we also seen it successfully removed people entirely from this space?
Has it removed them entirely?
Yeah. So, in terms of it's shunned people away from any particular person because they've been part of a project that has failed. It's an ever-growing space. More and more people are piling in, which means it's harder and harder to kind of have people that know the information of a year ago, 6 months ago, let alone 2 or 3. So has it successfully managed to deter a bad actor from coming back to the space?
Okay, so yeah, I like the way you asked that question the second time. The first one was like, no, I don't think this. But yes, has it deterred? I'm not sure the KYC directly has deterred them, but I believe the fact that they're transparent or doxxed and we know who they are has deterred them, because we won't let them back. And that's the thing, is the DeFi space is a community. Whether we agree on this topic or disagree or like this project, like that project, we're all in this family together trying to make the world a better place. And we're trying experiments. We're willing to risk a little bit, do a little bit. But there is still somewhat of a brotherhood or sisterhood, if you will, within this space. If I found out that somebody just stole $5,000 from MadHatter, yeah, and you come talk to me, now I'm liable to just park a car in your head. Just ain't gonna happen. So I believe that we as a community have bonded together in a lot of different ways, whether we agree or disagree, to shun the bad actors that if we know who they are.
Right. And I suppose one of my questions is going to be, what are the primary pieces of information that we use to do that?
As far as shunning them, you mean?
As far as deciding that somebody is a bad actor, as far as deciding that someone is doing something nefarious, and as far as to say they've done something nefarious and therefore they should not operate in this space again.
Okay. And sorry, I get distracted reading DeFi's comment down here.
I'm trying to read all of the comments, and there are some fascinating conversations that are happening while we're talking.
There is. It's amazing. You guys are doing awesome. And this is such a passionate aspect. And so I do apologize. And I heard somebody screaming in the other room. So I need like 60 seconds because I don't know if the house is on fire.
Sure.
But I want, and I'm going to have you re-ask that question, Matt. I'll be right back, buddy.
Absolutely. No problem.
Okay. So keep them entertained for 60 seconds. But if you're on YouTube, guys, and if you're not, definitely jump into the stream. I had a link to it and I lost it more than likely. But if you are, then right now in the chat, what I want you to do is, for the first giveaway, is type in, share the screen. I didn't share the screen. Oh, yeah. I broke it. Sorry, guys. I got so excited with everything else. There we go. Type in the chat, hashtag KYC, and I'm going to be giving away one of the Pillars Poker Party NFTs for that mystery seat. Okay. Do that, and I will be right back in 30 seconds, and I am so sorry, Matt. Hang tight.
No problem. So, yeah, good. Thank you. Although, let's remember that YouTube can't hear you speaking. So the people watching on YouTube are only going to get to hear me speak. But I'll ask you a question. It's interesting. I see someone in the stage questions has just said, management of funds without KYC is asking to get rugged. I just wonder why that's the case, because my belief is this place can work on in a decentralized manner. And if we always have the mindset that when you are giving funds to someone who is not KYC'd, it is automatically going to mean that you're going to get rugged, I think we start to suppress the kind of innovation we could see in this space. What do you think? Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you,
I
David.
will, for anybody that is listening on YouTube and didn't catch that, it's regarding the giveaway that we're going to be doing that's kindly been sponsored by Lamono. I will go into more details a little later on. You have a winner. Do you want to announce the winner?
Yes, and for everybody on YouTube, if you're over there watching there, we did the first drawing. So the winner is Abdul Kala Kol. I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name. I apologize. All you have to do is take a screenshot of your account that you're watching on YouTube right now on the screen and DM me on Discord. And I will get that sent over to you. And that's out of my personal funds. And that is a Pillars Poker NFT for the Mystery Seed. And now, Mad, when is that poker party?
The poker party, as it currently stands, is set to be on the 24th of this month. So next week, Saturday. However, we might push it back by a week because there have been a couple of unforeseen circumstances that might mean one or two people can't play. So we're just going to rearrange a few things and potentially push it back by a week.
Okay. Sounds good. So, but this NFT gives them a chance for the drawing for that mystery seed at the big table, correct?
Correct. Yes. And it gives them an opportunity to win a sizable chunk of the pot.
Perfect. Okay. So congratulations. And yes, I've got a couple more of those given away. And like I said, at the very end of this, I'm going to be giving away a Bitfighter NFT mint card. So there were only, 100 of them, I think there are? 100 or 500, I forget. I've got one to give away to the community here. So if you're not on YouTube, definitely jump on, subscribe to the channel, like this video. That's all I ask.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I apologize for that. And to bring you up to speed, in my house, we have a mystery knock. If there's 3 steady knocks, that means somebody urgently needs help somewhere. And apparently my son was in the garage. My daughter was in the living room. He knocked on the wall. I heard it and went, oh my God, what's going on? So yeah, my apologies.
Okay. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, it was something really dumb. And I went out and like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to borrow your stream. Like, come on, man. You know the game. It's like a safe word here. So, okay. I apologize for the interruption, guys. Common sense and good feelings help guide you. Absolutely. And we're trying to get through all the comments, and there's so many, guys.
There's some fantastic conversations going on, but I did have a question for you.
Sure.
What pieces of information are we utilizing to ensure that we think someone is a nefarious actor, they have done something nefarious, and they should not be allowed to operate in this space?
And see, that's a really interesting one, because I think that comes down to the definition and perception of that particular investors. As we know, if, like we talked about a second ago, if something lasts for 3 months and bleeds to death, you call that a slow run. I call that an experimentation that lost. And so I know that going into it because of my experience level. So really, is there any definable aspects that say, yes, this absolutely was nefarious, or this was just a really bad plan and it didn't work? And so I think everybody's going to have a little bit different answer there on what is good and what is bad.
So for me, I think it all comes down to the level of education that you have on any particular protocol, right? The more you saturate yourself with the information from that protocol, the more you can deep dive into what's going on in the background, the more of an informed decision you can make as to whether or not you think something is a slow rug or not. Is money being moved in a way that appears to be strange and against the tokenomics that are listed in the white paper, for example? Has money been taken out in a large sum that shouldn't have been, and we were told wouldn't be? You know, does someone, for example, tell you that they don't have the keys to a dead wallet, and then a year later they say, yes, not only do I have the keys, but I'm going to sell the whatever's in there at the right?
Right.
All of those
I know
things,
that one.
right? All of those things start to play a part in you know, when you start looking into these things, you can start making informed decisions. And I just wonder if KYC in its current format, which is simply taking the information from the person at the top and saying, I'm going to hold you responsible, without really educating myself or other investors on everything else that might be happening in the background. I'm only going to educate myself on you and your personality. That's what, to me, KYC represents. And I think that's where it's flawed, because there's so many other factors that go into a protocol that aren't being considered.
Okay, so let me ask you on that one, because like you said, you're holding the person at the top, the founders, the team, accountable for whatever occurs within that project, right?
Okay. Not always, though, right? A protocol lead is not necessarily the lead dev. The lead dev isn't necessarily the chief mod. And all of these are different factors of the same thing, but they are all managed in different manners.
Okay. So that goes back to my question. Do you feel that a dev should be KYC'd to the team lead or the founder?
Yeah, I haven't answered that question yet.
No, you haven't. You kind of went around that one, buddy.
Do I feel a team? I think it has to be down to the personal preference of the person who's running the protocol. I think there should be a base amount of knowledge. Yes. Do I think it's helpful? Yes. Do I think it's an absolute necessity for success? Not necessarily. I think there is scope for a lead dev to be anonymous, to have proved themselves with good work and continue to prove themselves with good work. And therefore, a protocol lead might trust them to do the coding in one of their projects.
Okay. And so once again, I would throw this same topic back, and I'm really not trying to beat you up, Matt, I promise. But once again, you pointed out they have a history of good ethics. Right. So they've proved themselves over time. Now we're talking about in DeFi space, a lot of new project, new faces, new things going on. If they have no background, no history, what exactly are they supposed to utilize to find out if that is a good person or not? If it's somebody brand new off the street, wouldn't you want some level of trust or some level of transparency that you're going to hire on to do your job? For instance, sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
Okay. For instance, you don't just pull up on the side of the street and some guy walks up and says, hey, I can fix your car for $1,000 right now. You're not going to hire him. You're going to take it to a shop, somebody that has the experience, the knowledge, the trust. And so just because somebody may or may not have the skill, most of us are very gun shy against them not having some level of either background and or transparency or certifications to perform these certain tasks. Me as an electrician, you're not going to bring anybody in to rewire your panel box in your house and it might kill someone or burst into flames. No, you're going to come to me as a journeyman electrician and say, hey, I need my panel box replaced. What are you going to charge me?
Mm-hmm. Similarly, how many times have we heard about somebody go to a mechanic and they've been overcharged because that person is quote unquote KYC'd and they've immediately been put in a place or a position of perceived authority, and you trust their judgment, and in actual fact, their judgment cost you $1,000 more than it needed to.
Absolutely. And in that instance, and it does happen because I turned wrenches for 12 years. I heard the horror stories. I understand. Right. But also in that instance, because you have a shop, a mechanic in place, there is somewhere you can go to. Then there's also the Better Business Bureau, because they are an established entity. You can go file claims against them and actually not only spread the word about it, but also take legal actions because you know who they are, because they are registered or KYC'd in some level, correct?
Well, no, this is where I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it is. I don't think, and I had this conversation with a friend earlier today, I don't believe KYC gives you the ability to go after somebody legally. I think it gives you access to information that can facilitate that. I think legislation is the only thing that allows you to go after that person. And we then start to muddy the waters a tiny bit and blur the lines between a space currently that is very thin in terms of legislation, and we are imposing our ideas from a highly legislated area and KYC and what it means to that. And we're trying to bring that into a place that has very little to no legislation.
Right. And I would definitely agree because, yeah, you start dealing with the legislation, it gets messy. But in the example you gave me of cars, there are a lot of things there. And so, yes, for certifications, things along those lines. Now, when you start talking, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for the example for the car, it was more an example of you can know someone's background, you can see them, you can trust them, you know they're a mechanic. It's a physical building you can walk into. It doesn't stop you from being had, right? It doesn't stop you from being swindled and somebody taking a bit more money than they should. And in actual fact, in that instance, and I think it's an even stronger argument to be had within DeFi, KYC starts to give a false sense of authority. It starts to then say, well, this person must be better than the person that doesn't want to KYC. This person is wanting to be more transparent than the person that doesn't want to dox, and therefore they are more trustworthy.
Okay. And I could absolutely see that. And I would have to agree with that to some degree. Doesn't mean they're guaranteed trustworthy. No. Does it give us a better feeling, like you said, that we can trust them? I would say some people who are uneducated or inexperienced in the space, yes, being KYC'd or doxxed, they just immediately say, oh, well, they must be trustworthy. Us who have been around for a while know that, no, that's not always the case. That's it's helpful, but it's not guaranteed. I think it's really about the community pushing the bad actors out, keeping the good actors in. And I think the brand new actors coming into the space, we've already gone through so many different bloodbaths. We need an extra little boost, not just saying, hey, I'm Bob the Builder here to start a new project. Here's my white paper. Have a nice day. Can I have $5,000? I think we need a little bit more than that, because we saw that 2 years ago. I mean, it didn't play out well. We all know it was ugly.
One of the pushbacks that you're going to get from people that don't want to dox and KYC is inevitably safety. How safe am I? Who are the people that I am entrusting my information with? Are they a reasonable person to give my information to? What experience do they have in taking on this kind of information? You know, those are some of the fears that start to creep in to people that are talking about KYC, in particular project leads. And what's the pushback that you then give to those guys?
Absolutely. And so I'm not going to say it's safe or not. People are nuts. I mean, people are absolutely insane. I mean, I'm hearing about it all the time on the news. But the trick is, I believe, okay, it's just my opinion. If I'm going to go out and start a business, part of that business is going to be getting to know these other people and asking them for funds to build this business up.
Mm-hmm.
In doing so, I have to take on some level of accountability as well as responsibility, and with that comes some risks. Now, if I'm not comfortable with that, maybe a project lead is not the best way to go for me. Maybe I need to be a part of a team. Maybe I need to give somebody who does want to be in the spotlight, is willing to take those hard hits, because it's going to happen. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to get punched in the throat at some point in time, even if it's not your fault. So you have to be willing to stand up there and take those hits. And that is not for everybody, plain and simple, whether you're a content creator, you're an interviewer like yourself. But if you're in the space, some people just want to be investors. Some people want to be on the sidelines. Some people want to be in front of the camera. I think there's a different level of risk and also accountability that goes with that different level. They have to be managed out and chosen. Is it something you want to do? And that's personally up to them.
Sure. Would you say Drip was a successful project?
I would say it survived long enough to be not a rug. Is it successful? A lot of people would say yes, they made a ton of money. Personally, I would say no, because I threw $100 into it, and that $100 is worth like $12 now. So
it's an emotive topic, and
right.
And already I see people commenting. Austin, I'm sure, is going to start giving me a hard time, especially if I bring elephant money into the equation.
And like we said, we're not going to be picking on projects here, man.
No. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm asking if it's a successful project, because it made a ton of people a ton of money.
It did, and it's also bleeding. So
it is, and part of the experiment is that, as you say, it's not necessarily a slow rug. It's just the mechanics that perhaps didn't work as it should have. But for a very long time, Drip gave people a lot of money. Now, people that are still in it are going to feel the hurt if they bought it, $220 and it's now down to 30 cents. Similarly, if you bought Bitcoin at $65,000 and it's now down to 25,000, you're also going to be feeling the hurt, right?
And
Drip,
that's
Drip
a great point.
Right.
So the comparison you just made, well, does that mean that Bitcoin's a successful project and Drip is not, because they both feel the pain? So where do you separate those two?
Quite. The one thing that they have in common is neither are KYC'd. Right. So it can happen in this space. You can hear the person's voice. I mean, it might not be their actual voice, but you do hear who you believe to be the team lead's voice. You hear them speak. People who got their money back. Bonks is making a very valid point. Drip was successful depending on whether or not you ROI'd and didn't ROI. And that's also a very interesting topic to expand on a tiny bit, because if we are saying that ROIing is the baseline for success, then I think we're setting the bar too low. If just getting your money back and I'm not saying that that's what your bonks is saying, but if just getting your money back is the baseline for a successful project, then that's perhaps where the fundamental issue in this space starts, right? We throw money at something expecting only to get our money back, while someone else somewhere might benefit more.
Exactly. And so that's a great thing. And that's one thing that this space has really gotten bad about is, well, you're going to be 3 months till you ROI. I don't care. If I was going to wait 3 months, I would have just held my damn money. Why would I even do it if I'm worried about the ROI?
Right.
I'm going into this to go beyond that. And so it's not about the ROI. That just means that you didn't get wrecked. It's really about going beyond that, because essentially, if we can't go beyond, why would we even bother, honestly?
Right. So there are some very good protocols out there, some that we've both spoken to, some quite recently, that have and are starting to bring different factors into this space. They're starting to recognize the typical Ponzi-nomics simply aren't going to cut it anymore, right? We're not in a bull run. There isn't an endless money tree. The money tree it's wilted. It's kind of sitting on the sidelines.
They chopped it down. It's gone.
yeah. It's trying to catch its breath.
Right.
And people are recognizing that in actual fact to push this space forward, you're going to need some form of an outside revenue. Is knowing someone's identity and being able to see their face, is that the most important part of knowing what they're doing for the protocol?
Most important part, no. Critical piece, I believe, yes, it is. Because essentially, once we know who somebody is, then we can see what are they doing. Now, if we don't know who they are, then they can unanimously say, well, I went over and talked to this person, and you actually know that person. It's like, hey, did Bob come talk to you? It's like, who the hell's Bob? What are you talking about, buddy? But if I go over to that person and say, hey, did MadHatter get a hold of you? It's like, oh, yeah, MadHatter did get a hold of me. Okay. Or, did that shiny bald-headed guy, did you get on camera with him? How did that go? Then you know. And so that's the trick, is it an all-inclusive? No. KYC will never solve the problems. Neither will doxing to 100 degree. But I believe it is another level that lets us look one piece deeper. Oh, sorry, my camera went all blurry. And that's one of the big topics is when I do my research on a project. Okay, I go into my white paper. I go through the website. I go through the Discord. I start researching all that, just like you do. And there's a certain level you hit that you can't go beyond. And so it's like, yes, okay, the business model looks sound. The Discord seems fired up. Tokenomics makes sense. Mm-hmm. Contract, I don't read contracts, but yeah, everybody else who does read contracts says it looks great. But then again, turn around and immediately after a project launches, what happens? It turns out there's a bad actor somewhere out there who's hacked a back door into it, and it gets wrecked. So now we know that it's not the team, because we know the team. I know that person face to face. And so I know that, no, that wasn't the guy. One, he's not smart enough. He doesn't have that kind of experience. Two is there's genuine understanding, regret, sorrow of, hey, man, this went way, way wrong. And I'm talking about a project that this just happened to a couple of days ago, and I felt so bad for them because they felt they did everything right, but there was a backdoor somewhere in the project. And so is a KYC a guarantee? No, absolutely not. But it does give us one more level of transparency behind just the documentation that's online. Just because it's online doesn't mean you can trust it.
Sure. Now, in that under those circumstances, the team leads, ultimately, was it not incumbent on them to ensure that no backdoor was in their code and that they hired the right person? And at what point do you then say, well, we have your details and we should go after you legally? You
Absolutely.
were irresponsible in the team choice. You should have looked after what you were doing better, and therefore it is now our job, because we have your details, to file a legal complaint against you.
And that is one thing that we have the capability to do. Doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere. No. But it also makes that person, I would hope, I'm assuming here, this is assumption, and we know how those go. That's assuming that that person being KYC Doxx in front of the camera and being a team lead, that they are willing to take on that risk, knowing that if something does happen, it's their responsibility. They have to answer up for it. And right. For this particular team I'm talking about, is they're giving refunds out of their own pockets to the best of their abilities, but they're not going to have enough. And we know that. And I think it's one of those where I think that's where the genuine sentimentality, that word, genuine honesty comes through of, hey, this was just wrong. I mean, you see a guy break down in tears on camera. There's obviously something going there. That's might be a great actor. I don't know.
Sure, but of course. I mean, you can be emotionally tied to something and feel bad when it fails, but at the same time, I suppose what we're saying with the KYC is you also are meant to be responsible for everything that's happening underneath you, and you got to suck it up, Buttercup. If it goes wrong,
right,
it's your responsibility. Austin has made a very good point, and I was kind of circling around to this, is that we are now, and I believe that's why for me KYC is is going to become a redundant term within this space. We're meshing audits with KYC.
Right.
We're conflating the two, right? Because ultimately what we want and what we're striving for is more information. That's what I believe. I think KYC is what we consider to be that process of getting information, because if we have that person's background, we know something about them. Reality is, I don't think it gives you much information about the project that they are creating or have created within this space. And I think what we're really wanting to strive towards, and the direction that we're trying to get into, is educating people with the right information rather than the wrong information.
Correct. I would have to agree on that one.
So
And
what do you think is missing from a KYC?
That's the trick. Is it really depends on what exactly is that KYC being utilized for. I mean, if we, like we talked before, is it being utilized for reprimand after something goes wrong, or is it utilized more for education before getting into something? So I think there's different levels there, depending on what's required. If it was for afterwards, then I think you need social security numbers and tax identification numbers and all this other stuff, blood type, all that. If it's going into it, I think verifying that face goes with that name, goes with that address, that's that person. Mm-hmm. It's just enough for the education to avoid the bad actors, not to take repercussions or a legal action against them. Now, a lot of people would disagree, saying, no, KYC is absolutely for legal action. Like you said before, you have to have the legislation to go through the legal action against the KYC. So it doesn't exist as of yet, but it will, I have a feeling.
In this space, KYC has never been, as we discussed, successful in holding somebody accountable. It might have been used as leverage to force someone to do the right thing, but from a legal standpoint, it's never been used to successfully pursue someone within this space who has done something nefarious, right? And I think you mentioned the education aspect of it. I think the direction that we want to be going in and need to be going in isn't just looking at someone. Again, your bonks is making a very valid point, but I also have to give him a little bit of pushback. And he's saying I can usually tell within 30 minutes if someone knows what they're talking about or not. Okay, that's fair. And that comes from experience of speaking to a lot of people. But there also might be a ton of people who are just simply too nervous to be able to get their words out. They might forget their train of thought in that initial conversation. They might, slip up on a few things, but be, very well versed in what they're doing in the background, right? So I think as a space, what we need to start doing is moving away from the idea that the KYC is a protective blanket and start saying to ourselves, education and information is the powerful tool here.
Correct. And so I got a few points I've been waiting for this one, Matt. Oh man, I've been waiting for this. Okay. Well, it's like a 4-part series here. So follow me down this rabbit hole, guys. It's going to get interesting. So talking about Yabonks, and as a lot of you guys know, Yabonks is my mentor, best friend, love him to death, brother in arms, taught me a ton and really helped me grow in this space. Now, I know that Yabonks wrote his contract where he requires a doxing or KYC of one of the team members or founders. Back in, I had it right there, May of 2022. Okay. Mm-hmm. And since that time, he has researched 50 projects. Of that, not one of them has flat out run. We've had 2 rogue agents within the team run away, but none of them have rugged. So does that mean that KYC does work to some degree by creating more safety?
I don't know if that is an adequate use case, because my argument would be, I think your Bonks' ability to sift through the information that he's given and his understanding of what could be happening at the back end allows him to make those kind of decisions on who he might speak to and who he won't speak to.
Okay.
I don't think it has much to do with the KYC. And then I believe it becomes a bit of a snowball effect, whereby there are going to be some projects that simply won't approach him because they know that he is going to do his due diligence and they probably aren't going to get past the first hurdle.
So if they know that he is kind of a gatekeeper, if you will, then isn't he actually doing us a service by protecting us from some of these nefarious actors because they're just terrified of him? They're like, yeah, no, hell no, I ain't going to do it.
I like you, Bonks, so I'm going to be nice and say yes. Of course, he was doing us a service.
Okay, so
because I get on with him. Yes. However, one thing I will say before you're going to come at me with the next point is there is and I'm sure he would agree with me. There is an element of that also being self-serving. It's for his protection as much as it is for the investors, because of course he's doing videos, he's putting his neck on the line, he puts his face on the line. So what he is doing by way of vetting these projects and having a contract is as much, if not more, to protect himself and his environment than the investors that might be watching his videos.
Okay, I would totally agree, and I absolutely 100 agree with all of that. And I have to back up time just a little bit.
Please do.
When we were talking about, shouldn't a founder or team member or team lead do some vetting process on their programmers and the developers that they hire? So shouldn't they do some of the same accountability by being that gatekeeper, asking those questions, doing that doxing to avoid the nefarious actors getting on their program?
Yeah, of course. As an internal process, you shouldn't be working with people that you don't know and don't trust. I mean, naturally, if you want to be successful within this space, and if your intent is to be around for the long haul and do something that is genuinely innovative in the area that we are operating in, then yeah, you absolutely should know the people you're working with, of course. It doesn't make much business sense to work with lemons.
So the first words out of your mouth there, Mad, were you don't want to work with people you don't know. But if they're not KYC, if you don't know their name, their face, do you really know them? That one hurt. Sorry, I had to.
say that one more time for me.
Okay, the first thing you opened that statement with was you don't want to work with people you don't know. And you're right. If you don't know their face, their name, something, you don't want to work with them. So why would we work with projects we don't know? So thank you for proving my point, sir.
I don't necessarily know if that's the point. I think there is multi-layers of knowing somebody. I can work with someone, especially within this space, whom I've never seen the face of and work very well with them, but wouldn't necessarily sit down and have a beer with them.
That's probably me.
Right. No,
I just had to throw that at you, Matt.
Of course, I know. And good. No, you're teasing me. I appreciate it. That's what we're here for, right?
Right. We're having fun, man. This is all about fun, guys. And we had one comment come through, said, hey, he's really reevaluating KYC, and that's great. And Tanangi. And that's what we're here for. We're not saying one is right or one is wrong. In fact, MadHatter and I both know we're not going to win. Neither one of us. What we want to do is get you guys thinking.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm coming for the win.
Do it. Our biggest thing is to educate, to get you guys thinking beyond just the surface. I was talking about, the turd floating on top of the toilet. No, we want you to go down, go deeper, go to the very bottom, dig as far as you can before you ever get into these projects. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to him. Do your own research, because in the end, only you're accountable for your actions. So this is to help all of you think just a little bit deeper than maybe you did with the start of the day.
Now, here's a question for you. We're talking about KYC, and perhaps you've mentioned a couple of times now that internally should people know one another. Right. You take a company like IBM, and half the people might not know the devs that are working for them, right? They might not know who they are. Most IBM clients don't know who the devs are. They just send some work in the company's direction and it comes back. At what point should we not necessarily know that's who you, myself, or your bonks, or anybody else? Is it important for us as the investor to know who is sitting behind the project, or should someone be out there collating the correct information and doing it the right way, that we can look at the information and then make as an informed decision as we need to in terms of whether or not that project is for us? Because I don't think, especially in this particular space, giving details to the masses is necessarily a good way of going about it. I think it's a very dangerous approach for a lot of protocol leads. There are crazy people in this space that will find you, they will threaten you, and over the smallest things. So there has to be that element of protection.
And I believe there is in a lot of ways. I believe our current legal system protects us in a lot of ways. Now, yes, there are crazies. There are people out there with guns shooting up schools. I mean, crap like that happens all the time. It's sad, it's depressing. It's like, oh my God, what's wrong with you people? Right. But at the same time, there's a legal system to keep us as people safe, whether it's the legal right to carry guns, whether it's the police force that we can call 911. I believe there are legal aspects to keep us safe. So I often wonder, is that just, in my opinion, an excuse to say, well, no, I don't want to do this because what if somebody shows on my doorstep? Well, for me, God forbid, because my wife has a Glock and she's going to unload 2 clips on you before she ever calls 911. And in the state, that's allowed.
Right.
A mother of a children can actually reload twice and empty the gun before it becomes excessive force. Just so you know, that's valid in Idaho. So I think that that is being used too many times as saying, I just don't feel safe. Well, you know what? If you feel that unsafe, you probably shouldn't be the head of a business. Plain and simple, because you're going to get kickback. You're going to get threats. I've been threatened. It's like, great. I dare you. Show up, please. It's going to be the worst day of your life. I guarantee it.
I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I understand the point that you're making, and I get why that works in the real world. But when it comes to this kind of space, I think sometimes the lengths that people can go to in a digital world can far outweigh what can happen in the real world. In the real world, you can, you know, like take a Glock out and shoot someone, you know, but lives can be completely ruined in a multitude of different directions online, for example. But it all boils down to what is, when it comes to a project, when it comes to a protocol lead, when it comes to a dev, what is the information that actually matters? What factors are most important for you to make an informed decision? Because it can't just be, this is John Doe from Connecticut who might have run a couple of companies in a previous lifetime and is now moving into the world of crypto. Those can't just be the only factors that we need and should look into when it comes to making those decisions on investment.
Right. And so I agree. It's one of those, there can be a lot of things such as defamation of character. There can be scandalous photos shared. I mean, there can be all kinds of rumors and just FUD created, and there are constantly. And that's one of those, again, comes back to the founders, the team members. Are they willing to put themselves out there for this type of ridicule, this type of persecution? Because, yeah, in this digital age, we can find all kinds of things. Plus, people are going to make it up, plain and simple. So again, it comes back to, I believe, the team and the founders. Are they willing to put themselves in that level of transparency and risk to be ridiculed, to be persecuted? And if they're not, then maybe being a team founder is probably not the way to go for them.
Okay, but that doesn't really answer the question in terms of what information we should be going after. I understand that you might say somebody should put themselves out there and you know, put themselves, if they want to manage large amounts of money, then they should be prepared to take the heat. Now, that is very easy for the outliers who have particularly impressive resumes, right? You take someone like AJ Brockman, his resume is ridiculous.
Right, it's insane.
It's you know, you can't compare 99.9% of the world's population to that man through what he's achieved, right?
No.
Which makes his life easier in convincing people that actually he can do very well in this space. He's, you know, he's set himself apart already, even if he had no experience in the space to begin with. There might be someone out there, however, whose resume is nowhere near as impressive. It might even be bad, but they are a genius when it comes to coding, or they're a genius when it comes to a certain aspect of this particular space. And they might not feel comfortable coming forward because they believe that the background information that they have is simply going to put them back and at the bottom of the pile rather than at the top of the pile where they deserve to be.
Okay. And so that's a great way to look at it. Now, you define as they deserve to be at the top of the pile. Do you think that their skill set makes them deserving of that top of the pile?
I'm saying that there are people out there that can do incredible things that might not necessarily get the opportunity to do so, right? There's someone out there that can break the 100-meter world record, but they might never get the opportunity to do so. That's simply what I mean by that.
Okay.
They deserve to be in that race. They just can never get there.
Okay. And I agree that the world is not a fair place, and it is never going to be fair. And anybody who tells you it is, they're lying to you, plain and simple. There will always be great people who are overlooked because somebody has a bigger following or things along those lines. But you used AJ Brockman as a great example, and AJ is amazing. Haven't talked to the man personally one-on-one yet. Been trying to, hoping to one day. But he's an awesome example because I've done a lot of research on his past, on what he's done through Yabonks and through all the EMP and everything else. And the simple fact is, would EMP have done as well if it wasn't run by someone as transparent as AJ. Let's say he was never transparent with who he is. Let's say he was anonymous. Would that protocol have done as well?
No, he was absolutely aided by his willingness to be transparent. Of course,
Okay.
he was setting the tone. That doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it.
I agree. There are multiple ways, and the simple fact is, some people have to put themselves out there, whether we've made mistakes. You and I had an interview a couple months ago. We talked about, the life of Serenity. And, I was honest about, yes, my past, my addiction, my crash business. I've had all kinds of problems. I'm forever in recovery as an addict and always will be. It takes a lot of guts to say that on live screen to these people, yes. And I have to be honest enough to say, I will be an addict the rest of my life. There is no cure. I take it day by day and I stay clean. I've been clean 5, 6 years. I don't know, long time. And whenever I'm not, I have to be accountable for that too. But I believe that level of honesty and transparency adds a lot of strength, and people can relate to that. And if they can't, that's okay. They don't have to.
Agreed. But now what we're doing is moving into the realm of an interesting conversation whereby you're suggesting that non-KYC is not honest. And therefore, it becomes a false cause, right? That it's drawing a parallel simply because we're saying, well, KYC equals honesty. That isn't necessarily the case. There are plenty of very honest people out there that aren't necessarily KYC'd.
Right. Not saying KYC is a level of honesty. It's not. It's a level of transparency to give people the opportunity to research beyond just the surface.
Agreed. However, there is information inevitably missing from the KYC as we know it in this space.
Right.
Right. Can we agree on that?
Yes, we can agree. Hey, we found something to agree on, man. All right. Only took us an hour and a half, but we found something.
It did. We need to move towards a space where we are not saying, because one of the problems, and I'm sure somebody's already said this, and I imagine it was probably Austin, that the KYC is often synonymous with a stamp of approval. It comes with a gold stamp. It comes with someone saying, I'm saying that this is worth investing in. This is a certificate of passing X, Y, Z. Without truly having all of the information to hand. I mean, for example, are you able to tell me some of the criteria that people go through in the current KYC process in this space?
Actually, I can tell you exactly what KC Consulting requires.
Please do. I figured you might have looked one up, so
yes,
hit me with it.
So, as you guys know, Cyril Kier, love him to death, another brother in arms. We have our rags to riches. We do a lot of things off camera stuff together. He is the CEO of KC Consulting. So, had a chat with him this morning to verify my information. And if anybody wants the link, I will be happy to share it with you. Let me go back to my list. Sorry, I've got to find this here. I know I put it in. Okay, so yes, Mr. Cyril Kier requires a driver's license, a government ID, or a passport, one of those three with a physical address. Also requires a utility bill with a physical address with that person's name to verify that. On top of that, he will send out a physical letter every 6 months to verify that that person is still at that address. If at any point in time they do not return or respond with the code that's on that letter, their KYC is revoked, and it's announced that, hey, they are no longer KYC. So it does take some form of legal documentation, some form of a utility bill, which, yes, could be faked. I understand that. So can documentation be faked. So there are still flaws, but that is at least some relevance of trying to keep honest people honest. But as we know, the people who are truly nefarious, they're going to break every law there is. So there's still a flaw there.
Right. Agreed. And Cyril, not Cyril, right? I always say the name wrong, and he gets very upset. Cyril, yes. He's a very smart man, and it doesn't surprise me that he has a process for KYC, and it doesn't surprise me that it's methodical. I still think it's missing certain pieces of information. I still think that we need to move away from the traditional, all I have on file is you as a person. What we need to start doing is educating investors in this space about what else is going on. And you raised some good questions. Do you know the team that you're working with, for example? Who are you outsourcing this information, the jobs to? Who's on the multi-sig, for example? Why does it have to be that we have to go off and do our own research, and those people that really enjoy the space but might not necessarily have the acumen or the time to go in and really research white papers and look at discords. Why is it we don't offer people that form of information when we are running through something like a KYC?
And that's great. And so I'm going to flip this around on you, Matt, because I've been waiting for this one. I think this is about as close I'm going to get to this one.
Please.
So I agree. Education is key. And that's something that we are all trying to strive for. That's something that I always say, hey, don't listen to me. Don't listen to this guy. Don't listen to anybody, because in the end, you're accountable. So even if I'm excited for a project and it rugs, and like Austin said, what if somebody else, nefariously says they're Bob the Builder, whatever, and oh, I know Bob, so I trusted him. It's not the real Bob. There's always possibilities, there's always risks. So in the end, it absolutely falls on the investor to make the right choice and to understand that it is a risk. And you can't come back and say, oh, well, Serenity said it was good, or MadHatter said it was good, or Austin said it was good, or your bonks did. No, that's never an okay. That's passing the buck. In the end, we are the one who say, yes, invest. Yes, sign MetaMask. Nobody put a gun to your head to click that button. Although I've heard that there's something news they're stealing crypto now. We won't get into that one.
Right. Yeah.
But
go on.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
Okay. But I want to throw something out at you, Matt. So
Please.
On like my channel, and on Yabunks' channel, and people who require some level of doxing, some level of KYC, I know that at least I saw a face. Now, here in America, I cannot publicly dox. That's against the law. I can't share somebody else's identity without their permission.
Right.
I could go to jail for it. I don't know if that's same in the UK or not.
Yeah, I mean, no, you can't.
Okay.
The laws, I don't know, to be brutally honest, I don't know the ins and outs of the laws in terms of giving someone's information over. Certainly, I don't think you can publicly out somebody without due cause.
Okay. But now if somebody legally, the federal government stepped in and said, hey, you talk to this person, they stole $100 billion. We need that identity. Here is a warrant for it. Okay. Now I have a legal obligation to do so. Therefore, I'm not in trouble, but I'm actually doing a service by helping the community because I have that information. Now, if I didn't have that, I couldn't be an assistance once that legislation, whatever process occurs. I am essentially useless because I didn't have any information to offer or to help out.
I agree with that. Yes.
Okay. So I got to get my wording down because I wrote this. And first of all, I want to start this off with, I respect and love the Pillars community, especially the founders. You guys are amazing. But have you ever had a, let's see, hold on. Let me read this because I don't want to read off the screen. Okay. So you guys have a very unique approach of letting everybody on the screen and letting the community sort out the bad actors. You asked some amazing, tough questions, man. And I've been nervous for this interview for a while, or this debate. Because, yeah, you're a hard hitter, and I love it. Now, the trick is I have experience in this space. I have education. I've been rugged. I've gone through all these feelings. So I kind of know what I'm looking for. How do you feel about brand new investors coming in and listening to these people, not having that experience to really know what are the hard questions, what are not? And maybe just the fact that they're up there and you're talking to them says that, hey, they must be okay because MadHatter's talked to him and he's super awesome. So he wouldn't talk to them if they weren't good people, or he had at least some level of trust within that person. So do you feel that you are operating on the assumption that your community is always educated enough to know the difference of good and bad?
Do I think I'm operating on the assumption that people know the difference between good and bad? No, because I think we try to make it as clear as possible that we are prepared to speak to everybody and we will ask tough questions. Now, if the question is, can we improve on how we communicate with our community to ensure that they are always fully up to date on our stance and who we're speaking to? Yes.
And that's right. And I'm not beating you down. Please understand.
No, not at all. I think it's great pushback. I think it's fantastic to bring that angle. It's an interesting question. It's a very good question. In fact, I do have in a minute or two some alpha to drop for you. But yeah, I think we could absolutely do a better. We could do a far better job at helping the community educate or be educated, in that we are not just speaking to people that we think are good actors. We're not just trying to convince people that the protocols that are on the stage are going to be great and go in and jump in. So yes, could we? We could. I don't think we could do so through KYC, however.
Right. I would agree. KYC is probably not the thing. But then if a team is doxxed or something like that, before I will even bring them on, then I believe that I personally am running a little bit of a barrier. And I'm going to pause real quick. Hold that thought for a second.
Yes.
Everybody on YouTube right now, we get another drawing. Type hashtag pillars on the in the chat there. Do another NFT because I know MadHatter's running out of steam because told him pack a lunch, but I don't know how long we're going to go. So I just want to have that drawing because I want to give away these NFTs. I want to thank you guys for joining us. And yes, you can be on Discord and YouTube at the same time. You can win on both of these guys. So yeah, open them up. All I ask is please like and subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about us. It'll be great. So yeah, I had to get that out real quick. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. Smash the like button on that YouTube video, please. Everybody in the Discord, take a look at the channel. It's always some interesting stuff that you do, both live and through recorded Q&As, AMAs, and like I've said to you before, I've used a couple of yours along with some other people that are talking your bonks. Austin, for example, before he kind of moved away from that, I've used their videos and your videos for research. So yeah, I highly recommend people check you out.
Well, thank you, sir. And yes, absolutely. Follow Yabongs, follow Austin, follow Sean Clark. These are great people that I've learned from. All have been my mentors, my friends, and somebody that I can pick something up. And MadHatter, on your interviews, buddy, I take notes. You are literally like the master of interviewer of that cool, calm, collected. And yeah, I've been impressed. And so I love pillars to death. So yeah, hashtag pillars right now. A lot of people putting KYC. No, guys, that one's over. It's hashtag pillars. Let me show you again real quick. There you go. Type that in the chat for the NFT giveaway.
So I said I had some alpha for you.
Yes. Go and drop it on me, and then we'll go back to the other one.
You asked, the other question is, how can we, what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing to really have our community better understand that we're not endorsing a project, and that by virtue of the fact that they're speaking to us does not mean they're good. We can do better, and we've been thinking about how we can do better. And we, in particular, have been looking at the KYC and whether or not that can be improved upon. So at the pillars, what we're going to be doing, very soon, is, along with still doing the Q&As and having the space, we're going to be doing something that we're going to be calling the KYT, and it's Know Your Team.
I like it.
The entire process is going to be like a KYC, but it is going to be centered around asking the valid questions that people would want to know, and some of the things that you and I have been discussing. So, for example, previous business experience, dev experience, the team structure, how many owners, is there a CEO, is there a lead dev, have you outsourced your roles, mods, front-end dev, smart contract dev, are there smart contracts that we can look at, the legal jurisdiction that you might be operating in, the team age range, for example, are there fund managers, who owns those, multi-sigs, how many people on those multi-sigs. We're going to be doing that for protocols that want to come and run through that process with us, so that we can really dial into educating the people that are in the community and investors outside of our community to make an informed decision.
Very good. My hat's off to you, buddy. I like it. That sounds great. Although that sounds kind of like you're doing some of the level that I'm discussing here.
I at no point said that I disagree with the stuff that you're throwing at me. I think in the format of KYC, I don't believe it works. I think the space needs improvement, and if we can move in a direction that is improving it, then we're absolutely going to try and do that. And
absolutely,
in no way am I saying that this is going to be the final stop of information, and no way am I saying that by doing it, we are suggesting that these are valid projects. It is simply a further educational tool that protocols can utilize and investors can utilize in order to make an informed decision on their money.
There you go. And I definitely want to back that up. Same thing back to you, Matt, is I agree with a lot of things you're talking about. I think the DeFi, you can be anonymous. And I think anonymity is a great thing in a lot of ways. And so I could argue both sides of this topic, and that's why this is so much fun. In fact, talking to your bonks earlier, it's like, okay, now think about what he's going to say and then come up with a response. It's like, and yeah, the trick is it's a very muddled system and it's not refined. It's scattered and there's no clear defining areas anywhere. There's nothing perfectly safe. And I think, like Mad's saying, is I agree with anonymity. I think that's a great thing. I think we should be able to do it to a degree. I think there's certain times when it needs to be clear and transparent, and other times when it doesn't need to be. And so
Right.
but I think everybody has their own definition of that.
Agreed.
So I'm very proud of you because, yeah, that was my big hard hitting question I was coming at you with is, I believe that if somebody comes to your community and they don't know any better, let's say like my mother, she's 81, something like that, investing in crypto, but she really doesn't understand a lot of the crypto aspects and requires me to define them. If she were sitting in your space and you're asking these questions, a lot of people without that experience or education, they're not going to know that this guy's blowing smoke and he's just full of shit. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. You and I are laughing at him like, oh my God, you sound like such an idiot. But somebody in the community may not know that unless it's actually pointed out or drilled out. And you're very respectful. You never actually just throat punch somebody. And my hat's off to you because there's a few things I've heard people say to you. It's like, man, why don't you just slap him? Really,
right.
As an idiot.
And that's an interesting point to bring up, and actually that's a fault of mine. It's not always a strength. There are times where it's poignant to be respectful and really not go after someone because it's not going to provide much value to the conversation. And there are times when in actual fact I should be going harder and I should absolutely dial into what's being said. And yes, we're always evaluating, me in particular, the host of the Q&As, I'm always evaluating my approach. And I am always thinking about ways in which I can dial in a little bit harder so that, at the end of the day, there is an assumption that the people that are listening to the Q&A are going to have a base level of understanding of the space. And they're going to be able to hear when someone is floundering or doesn't necessarily understand the topic of conversation that we're talking about. And at times, I think we do need to put our necks on the line a little bit by making sure we really go for the jugular at times.
Yeah. So, and I would agree. And I think, I think that's great. And the fact that you have the courage to say that, I could be a little better. And I think that's what makes you great at what you do because you're always striving to be better. And so, it's just one of those topics that we have to remember that there's the brand new people. And that's very much what Down Home Crypto is all about, is bringing the new people who have no idea what crypto is into the space and slowly kind of holding their hand, walking them along. Here's a blockchain, here's a smart contract, here's a MetaMask wallet. When they jump straight in yours, I believe that there's already that level of understanding to comprehend the conversation. So, no, my hat's off to you, buddy. I think that's great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for the space, right? I mean, I'm looking at the conversation now and I'm seeing Rug Me Daddy 69. I have no idea what it is, but people seem to be having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think Austin's going to strangle somebody in a minute. From it's over on this screen, so I haven't been paying much attention to that. I've been trying to watch today's chat. I got to go back and read all this because this has been a blast. So real quick, let's do another giveaway.
Please do.
Okay, so guys, if you have already signed up, you've got like 5 more seconds. I'm going to draw for the second NFT, and if you are a winner, like I said, take a screenshot of your YouTube channel with your ID and you as the winner, and then DM that to me on Discord so I can verify it's really you because I don't want to send it to the wrong person. This is for one of the Pillars Poker Party mystery seats at the table. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and draw. Big money, no whammies. I have to do that at least once. Winner here is Muppet Box 1982. Muppet, congratulations. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Yeah, DM me and I'll get that NFT to you this afternoon.
Right. So Tanogi is going to come in and KYC with you at some point. You and your bonks, because he's going to be doing a project that is Rug Me Daddy 69. He's going to be fully KYC'd. And I guess the project is going to do exactly what it says on the tin, right?
Apparently so. Okay. So great. You can KYC. That's wonderful. And I will give you my honest opinion. So one thing I want to share with you guys. So if you don't realize, and I did want to share this, is the contract I run with here at Down Home Crypto is the exact same one that Bonks runs with, pretty much the exact one. But I want to share with you guys, if I put it on my screen correctly, and I probably broke it. I broke it. So give me 1 sec. Technical difficulties, because I can't have nice things. So I can't have nice things. There it is. Okay. I just didn't share the whole screen. That's where my problem came into play. Share screen. There we go. And I think this is one thing to really understand is exactly what the phrasing says. So this is a snippet straight out of my personal contract that I took a copy of from Alex, who shared it with me, and I've been running it on his teachings. So these are the top 3 conditions in my contract. If you won't meet these, I simply will not do it. It's just the way it is. Not saying it's right, not saying everybody should, but I do know a couple other content creators started a whole hoopla back in January when they suddenly said, hey, we're going to start this new thing and do this.
Right.
And Bonk's been doing this since March of last year. This is who I got it from. I've been doing it since the first of the year. So this is not new stuff. Some people have already been running with this. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or better or worse, but it is exactly the conditions I run with. And as you guys can see, is they must meet face to face with me personally, or I'm not dealing with them. And I can tell you, I've turned down more video reviews and jobs than I have actually gotten because of that factor. So I have to ask myself, is this doing a service? So what do you think, Mad, reading through this?
I've got a split screen going on, so it's a bit small. So if you could kind of read out the points to me so I can hear what they are.
Of course. So condition 1, I will need to video chat with at least one of the project owners so I can see face-to-face who is leading your project. I want to see who I will be representing with my brand and be able to put a face with a name. This will all be done privately. 2, the project owners must give their word that they aren't going to rug pull or commit financial fraud with this project. I'm a man of my word, and this part is an honor code that I operate by. 3, I do not pump or shill. I will indicate my views that the videos are sponsored, and I will give my honest, objective analysis and opinion to the best of my ability.
So I'm going to say straight off the bat that my problem has always been with how we define KYC. What you guys do in terms of the contract that you place in front of the people that you're willing to speak to, I admire and respect tremendously. I also think it is a good way of moving forward in this space, and I think it is a necessity. That's never been an argument for me. I think that part of your process is great. I just think we are in a place where we can start to move. You see these conversations happen, and you will continue to see people say, well, why don't we get the extra information? What does it mean to just have those people's faces on a screen and you knowing who they are? And I think you guys have been moving absolutely in the right direction to that point. And that's exactly why we decided we wanted to try and do something. And there's going to be plenty of people that are going to laugh at us, and there's going to be, you guys that might go, oh, of course they're going to try and do something slightly different, and of course they want to move into this kind of realm of the KYC, KYT. I get it, but what we're really looking for is also feedback from all of the people that are laughing to say, well, what should we be asking? What do you want to see on it? The fact that you have your Bonks' contract and it was shared with other people, and even if they don't want to admit it and it was a prompt for someone else to start doing that process, it's done its job. And that's where the power is, right? That's where the power is in encouraging everybody to take on the same process, because then you start to really whittle down who the bad actors are, because the bad actors are not going to want to operate in that space.
Agree. And that's really what KYC and doxing is all about. Is it's not to stop, because it's not going to happen. It's to hopefully shun them enough that they really don't have a platform to. And as we know in this space, if you don't have people investing, then you're not going to take off. You're not going to survive. And yes, you're going to get some people's money, but not near as many. So if nothing else, what we're trying to do is help reduce the damage that occurs. And that's about all we can do, unfortunately.
It is. Absolutely. And having that base of being able to say, well, the only people that I will speak to are people that I've looked at and I know and I've looked into the backgrounds of, is a very good starting point.
Well, thank you, sir. And my hat's off to you, Bonks. He started this process a year before everybody else. And even though, like you said, other people may not be giving credit where credit is due, I absolutely will. Because, yes, I went to Bonks and said, hey, how do I do this? He's like, here's mine. Do what you want with it. I'm like, cool. And not saying it's the best way, not saying it's the right way, not saying that you have to. It's just simply what I have chosen. Now, what I can say is on my YouTube, I'm going to switch gears again on you real quick, Matt. We ran a poll. Why does it stop sharing that screen? I hate it when it does that. I will have to fix it. I don't know why it's doing that. I ran a poll a month ago about this very debate. And oh, there we go. Your screen. I've got to be doing something. Entire screen. That's why I'm an idiot. My bad. There we go. So yes, 30 days ago, you can see the date, 1 month ago, it said, should founders of crypto projects be forced to publicly dox their identity? We had 17 votes, 76% said yes, 18% said no, and 6% said, I don't care. So it's interesting.
It is. It is interesting. Is it also going to be the same, and will you get those same numbers if we're in a bull run?
That's a great question. And my other question was, would it be the same on, let's say, a community that doesn't go through the doxing or KYC that I require for my channel? Because this was posted on my channel. So
right.
I would be really interested to see where we would get different results and how much they would vary. If its project is not KYC'd or doxed, yet they're doing phenomenal. And there's a couple of them out there that, I know one I heard a couple weeks ago you talked to, they've been out there it was a Twitter space. They've been out like 16, 18 months running solid. And they never did KYC or doxx. Not saying they don't exist. Please understand that, guys. Not saying that's an end all be all, but I'm really curious what this same poll would have looked like on one of their servers.
Right. It's an interesting question that came onto the YouTube comments, which is, who are the kings of KYC? And it's a tongue-in-cheek comment because it's from Lemono, and of course they've shown their faces, and they, you have their address if you want it, and you can see their business. I think their approach is smart. I think they are understanding the space. I think they understand the investment pool that they are trying to appeal to, and I think that they are understanding that the space is moving towards, certainly now, and especially in a bear market, is you're going to trust people that you can see rather than people that you cannot.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of who are the kings, I think it's anybody that is prepared to show their face is already taking, as we've already said, and as you've pointed out, that leap of faith to put their necks on the line and say, right, we are going to be putting ourselves out there. I think the proof is only ever going to be in the pudding, however, when someone at some point is going to be held in some way accountable. I think that is going to have to happen at least once before we can really start taking the KYC serious, which is why we see it as an educational tool and then expand on questions rather than it being, right, well, this instills trust. Yes, there is an element of extra trust that comes with showing your face, but I do believe that someone at some point will have to be held accountable. And when that happens, then I think the process is working.
I would agree that it does need to evolve to that, but I think still, I believe it has an effect. And as far as who's the king of KYCs, and first of all, I want to say to Lemono, thank you so much for the giveaway, because on the Pillars Discord, guys, definitely join up over there. And I shared the link earlier. Let me share this one more time, because they donated $100 for this. And guys, that is so great. Thank you so much for being so generous. I did catch the AMA and it was awesome. And I'm really looking forward to doing some work with you guys here soon, because I love the fact that you did dox. You are KYC, you're up on screen, and I thought it was awesome. And there's two other things, people, that I have to mention on that is Cyril here has been amazing. He's always on camera. He runs KYC Consulting, Only Burns, Parrotway Finance, all these. He's always been absolutely transparent. And also Collective Finance, another amazing team of being rock solid. You can track them down. You know where they live, everything that you want to know about them. So those are my top three that I've personally dealt with, that I want to give my hats off to all three of them for having the guts and the courage to throw themselves out there as transparent as they can be and say, yeah, here I am. Do your worst.
Now, let me ask you a question in terms of your KYC. Have you ever had anybody that's come to you and said, I would like that information because I don't like what they're doing?
No, I haven't. I have not run into that as of yet. I'm sure Yabonks has.
Right.
But yeah, I have not run into that situation as of yet. And if it does, it's one of those, just like I say in my contract, like I tell people, no, it's private. Now, if the government steps in and has a legal warrant to attain that, they can. Am I going to share that? Even if they rug me? No, I'm not. I'm not going to utilize that as a weapon. That is an agreement amongst gentlemen that I will not do. And so, yeah, it won't happen.
And what happens if somebody from another country where legislation is different approaches you? Because that's also going to be a question that comes up, right? Is, we're talking about people who are listening from all over the world.
Right.
at the moment, and the law in one country might not transcend to the law in another country. And how do we bridge that particular gap?
And that is a very interesting gap because, yes, that will happen, whether it's extradition, things along those lines. Every country is very different. Now, what I have to do is respect the laws of the country I'm personally residing in. Now, even if another country says, well, no, you don't have to have that. Well, I'm sorry, but in my country, I do have to have that. So you have to get a hold of my embassy, go through them, go through the legal channels so that I get a legal US warrant to release it. And that's the way I'm going to operate, is unless legislature tells me differently, or some type of legal entity shows up and says, no, it doesn't have to have that, and I cross verify that, I'm never just going to hand that information over. Simply can't do it. It's not right.
Right. And working towards something that bridges that gap, I think, is going to be important in the future, right?
Absolutely.
When someone can come up with that in this particular space, and then we start moving towards what people have already said, immutable contracts, making sure that there are no backdoors, ensuring that someone can audit rather than KYC, that isn't part of the team, that can comment as to whether or not what they've seen. And there are audits out there, but I'm talking about audits that perhaps are a bit more affordable. There are plenty of protocols out there that can't afford the really high level audits, and they'll openly say it. So we can't afford it at the moment. And that is where a lot of this lies. Austin made a comment earlier on, I think it was about an hour ago, in which he was saying, KYC companies are always looking to just generate money. That's effectively what they're doing. It is a business for them, and part of that business is getting as many through as they can because it generates them funds, right? And I think that approach means that you often get things that are way too expensive because they want to generate that money coming in, and that just hurts us as a space.
I would agree, absolutely. And it's one of those, and that's really where the other side of this debate comes into play, is, like you said earlier, is even if somebody has a KYC, if there's no legislation to go after it for punishment or anything, is it really doing anything? Well, currently, it's not. But what it is doing is, we're kind of like in high school here. If you're not one of the popular kids and the people like us don't agree with you, you're going to be shunned because we're not going to cover you. We're not going to push you. And if you don't have the cool kids to follow you, you're not going to get the funds, and you have you're less likely to cause damage in the system, in the DeFi world. Sorry, I'll come up with the words eventually.
I'll level another question at you.
Yeah, go for it.
This Rug Me Daddy 69. It's fun. I understand why it's created in the context of this conversation.
Right.
But it does illustrate an interesting topic, which is, if someone does come out and says, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to KYC, but I'm giving you something that is inevitably at some point going to rug. You're going to make money if you play the game properly. You're going to be able to take funds out, but at some point it is going to disappear. Are they then supposed to be held liable for that? In this experimental space, do we then say, well, okay, they got away with it? Do we throw money at it and say, no, actually, we didn't think you were going to rug. Ultimately, we thought it was a joke. How do we approach people that might start to? Because this space is ever developing, and what people are doing is they're just getting smarter with the way they circumvent things, right? Okay, I've KYC'd, I've shown you my face. Let me think of a smarter way of perhaps running a project down in a way that doesn't look like I've run it, that rugged, but ultimately, I'm the only one that truly benefits with all the millions.
Okay. And that's a great thing, is on this particular example you gave me, they flat out said it's going to be a rug. It might be today, a week, a month. We don't know. So now it's a gamble. If we have those facts in front of us, the question is, do you want to pull the handle on the slot machine and take a gamble for it? Me personally, no. I'm going to sit back and laugh. It's like, okay, y'all are a bunch of idiots. But you know what? I think they're doing it for entertainment. They're doing it for having fun. And that's okay. We spend money for entertainment, stupider things all the time. So if it's bringing enjoyment, and if they do what they said, is it really a rug? I would argue that. I don't think it is a rug. I think they just simply followed the white paper. They said, here's how it's going to go.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, it's an interesting point, right? Is it actually a rug? And then we find ourselves in a position where perhaps there is another batch of themed protocols that come out that start to play a little bit smarter with wording and start to play a little bit smarter with how they present themselves in order to get the trust levels that we then come to expect, and we find ourselves back at square one.
Now, let me ask you, as you said, they're making more complicated, more interesting. Now, haven't we already seen that? We've seen projects that are so complicated with so many working parts that pretty much nobody really understands all of them. And on top of it being in an experimental space, we have no idea what these 25 different cogs are going to do in this machine once you turn it on. So essentially, isn't that the same thing?
It is, yes, there is an element of that. And then it brings us back to, well, how does KYC then help the investor make a decision on whether or not they should, based on just background information of that person in those circumstances?
And that's what's great. That's where we go back to the history aspect is if that same person is KYC, whether it be Bob the Builder, MadHatter, whoever, if they've done 3 other projects and they started off simple and just got more complicated, but everyone ended with a bleed to death or a slow rug, as you would, do you really want to go into the 4th one? But not knowing who the person is behind the creation of that, can you actually make that decision?
Right, and I just circle back to the same question, which is, or the same thought process, which is, I think it's going to take for KYC to be effective and actually work at some point, and or for those that are doing it and do find things that have gone wrong with protocols, to openly release that data. You don't have to release somebody's name, but I think releasing that someone was able to circumvent a KYC process in this particular protocol, they got away with it. Yes, we recovered the money. I think announcing that rather than kind of hiding it and just saying, well, we did our jobs in the background, I think telling investors that's what's happened is also very important. And that's where the transparency comes in, because ultimately what you're trying to say with a KYC is transparency is important. And that only works if everybody's transparent.
Agreed. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more content creators and people who are doing these interviews and reviewing these projects requiring KYC of some process, like with Fud Farm and Murdoch adopting this and trying to push it out more and more. Everybody's trying to get on this bandwagon because we're starting to see that to truly educate people, we need to not only educate them on the white paper and the tokenomics of it, but also the people behind it. Do they have a bad history of repeating the same process? Now, like I said, they may not be rogues. They may just be really bad projects that didn't work. And if we can go back and look and say, okay, well, this person was part of this tokenomics didn't work, but this tokenomics carried over to the same one, then I probably need to avoid this because I can already see it didn't work in that system.
Right. FYI, Rug Me Daddy 69 is now up 3,717%. Created as we were talking. Do you have one last giveaway to do before we wind down the conversation?
I think I have 2. I've done 2 so far, right?
Yeah. Have you? Okay. Should we do those 2, and then
so
kind of conclude our arguments?
I agree. So I've got Rugamy right now. #Rugamy. Yeah, I know. I'm using it off of Austin's and what's going over here in the Discord, guys. And so this is for another one of the Pillar Seat NFTs. And once again, if you're a winner, take a screenshot of your YouTube account that you're watching this and that you're a winner, DM me, and I'll get those over to you as soon as we're done here. So I'm going to let that run for a quick minute or so. So Matt, let me ask you, buddy, what have I not asked you so far, dove in, that you expected me to? What's that secret weapon that you were really kind of dreading? Like, oh, I hope he doesn't ask this one.
Now you're putting me on the spot.
Of course I am. That's my job.
I suppose one of the questions that I thought you might ask is why we have never shown our faces.
And that's
fair. I figured you might say, well, as a space that is growing, as a space that does Q&As, that prides itself on asking those hard-hitting questions and does have, I don't want to say influence because I don't think we have influence, but does have make an impact on perhaps an investor's decision to or to not go into a protocol. Why have we not shown our faces? And the reason for that is in part to protect ourselves, I guess, but also in part to show that this space can act with people like ourselves without the necessity for me to show my face or for anybody else that is part of our team to show their faces. We've shown our faces to one another. We've seen each other. that brings back to the question of, do you think it's important that people internally working with one another should know one another? We do. We've seen one another. But in terms of what we're doing here, I think there's perhaps an element of mystique by not showing our faces, and that aids our ability to ask the tougher questions when we're sitting down with protocols.
Okay, and that makes sense. And I would have to disagree. I do think you do influence a lot more than you realize. I know me personally, your questions, your answers, what you get out of the community and out of the founders definitely influences me. Because if you ask a hard question and they start stuttering like, okay, it's like, yeah, no, thanks, I'm done. Now I'm going to sit back, eat popcorn, and just watch and laugh because it's going to be funny.
Right.
So,
and it's kind of you to say, and one of those things that I think we're very cognizant about, and one of the things that we are always working towards doing better, is accepting that there is that responsibility of influence on people that are listening. I think we more often than not, and I'm sure you've gone through it, I'm sure your Bonks has gone through it, anybody that has created content I'm sure has gone through it, or anybody that speaks on a regular basis to a larger audience. I think there is an element of saying to ourselves, right, at this point, we're going to have to accept that we do bear some responsibility. We shoulder responsibility of some of the decision making. And how can we improve on what we're doing to ensure that we are fully protecting the people that we have influence on?
well said. I like that. And no, I think that's really important. And it's, as we talked before, you're talking about the education. And I think that's something that we all need to do more of. We're doing good, but I think we can all step that game up just a little bit more, not only for the experienced investors, but also the new people coming in. Because as we know, this bear market's not going to last. We're going to hit a bull market, and we're going to get a bunch of new people in. And the more educational content we have out there, the more better armed those new people coming in are going to be. And I think as long as we never forget about them and just lose focus, then we're doing a good service.
Yes, I agree. And again, that's always what we're striving towards, and we're going to make mistakes along the way. As I've mentioned in a previous chat, just trying to help people be educated. For example, we thought a hub idea with aggregating a bunch of discords in one space might be the way to go. We very quickly realized, actually, no, that isn't the way to go. And now we're very much leaning into the information portion of things. And it isn't lost on us that KYC, what you do with contracts, having people's information, seeing their faces, ensuring that you vetted them in a certain way, it isn't lost on us that that is becoming something that people appreciate more and more at the moment within this space. And to not look at that as something that we should be doing would not only be doing the communities a disservice, the protocols a disservice, but ourselves at the same time.
I would have to agree. And no, my hat's off to you because, yeah, it sounds like your game is changing and evolving. And that's what we all need to do. We all need to evolve, continue to educate, to grow, but to never lose sight of the new people behind us. So, no, my hat's off to the community. And I love the pillars. You guys are one of my favorite hangouts. And as you know, I'm at almost every AMA if I can make it, because I do learn so
Yes,
much.
you are.
So thank you.
And it's much appreciated, and we're going to keep grinding. And these kind of debates are great because we can bounce thoughts, ideas off of one another. As fun as it is to argue the counterpoint of certain things, and as fun as it is to kind of turn the screws on people that might think, well, this guy's just an asshole because all he's doing is pushing against the KYC idea, and then he comes out and says, "Oh, they're going to be doing a KYT." Well, this was a setup. I get it,
Right.
but it's part of the fun, and it's also our way of learning. I think this is a valuable learning tool, and having these discussions and having people listen to them is vital for the space to grow.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. 100% yes, because I always learn. Every stream I do, every Discord I'm in, every AMA I watch, every conversation like this I have, this is where I really learn. Because if I just go within my own head, I do something and I think, oh, it's perfect. Well, guess what? There's 500,000 other people that think it's just dumb. And so I really rely on the community, on people like you, MadHatter, where we can have these conversations. And that makes me a better person as a content creator, just all the way around in life, is being willing to say, hey, I don't know it all. And I think those are the smartest people in the world. So my hat's off to you, brother.
You too. I mean, you guys are doing it the right way. I like what you have going on. You and your Bonks in particular are really trying to tackle this space in a unique way. You obviously are guided by your Bonks. You call him your mentor.
Yes.
Cyril also sits in the background and I'm sure gives a ton of valuable input. And that all aids to, of course, strengthen what we're doing. My only fear with, if two of us band together and there aren't people always popping up in other spaces, is that it becomes then centralized where our thoughts are the only thoughts that people go to. And that's not what this space should be about, right? We want to have this expand to as many people as we can, and hopefully more spaces pop up and
absolutely
challenge our way of thinking.
Yes, and always. That's what we've got to do. And that's why, I've kind of made a niche in my world, and mine's a little different than Doxx's. Although he's my mentor, he guides me in the social media aspect. But when I go to actual investing, tokenomics strategies, I totally go to Cyril. He's the master of that stuff. And so it's really about saying that Crips on me is all the time. Your network is your net worth. So never think that you're going to be the master of all. Don't even try to be. Try to find your niche that you fit rock solid in and master that niche. And you'll team up with other ones that have the niches next to you. And in the end, you become a huge community that there's always someone they can get that information from. And that's what my goal is, not to be a master of all, just to master my little world. And then from there, I can say, hey, Pillars has an awesome AMA. Go talk to MadHatter over there. Cyril has a killer strategy. Or, oh, you want to know anything about animals? Man, Doxxed is the dude to know all about animals, social media, how to wind up a crew. Absolutely. He's the man to go to.
Right, agreed. KYT is going to fall into that remit, and hopefully we can get enough feedback from people that we can start doing it the right way. I did plan to speak to you privately about your process with the contract to see what it looks like, because it is all just an educational tool. We can't force anybody, of course, to invest their money, nor would we want to. We are in a position to help people understand what it is that they might be, or where they might be wanting to put their money. And if we can do that fully informed and then fully inform them, I think this space grows very, very well and very, very fast.
I would agree completely. And yes, as I say in all my videos, everywhere I go, guys, listen to this one. If you heard nothing else today, hear one thing. Do not listen to me. Do not listen to him. You are accountable for your own investments. So make your own decisions, do your own research. I know you hear that all the time. That is probably the most important thing that people forget, is you are a person. Believe in yourself, believe in your mind. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it, man. I don't care what I say. I don't care what MadHatter says. If your gut, spidey senses say no, don't. It's real simple.
Right. Agreed. And more often than not, I've ignored those spidey senses and I've been stung quite badly. So,
me too.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. Do we have a winner for the last giveaway, or for the 2 giveaways that we're doing?
One from the last. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I've just been waiting for a pause. We've been on a good roll here. So, okay. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Big money, no whammies. Big money, no whammies. Come on. Winner for the last NFT for the poker party possible mystery seat is Patrick A. Congratulations, Patrick. Okay, so like I said, take a screenshot of your YouTube watching this, your winner. Shoot me a DM to verify it's actually you, and I will send that over to you. And I will get the last one set up. In fact, I will do this right here while we're on screen. That way, because I know you're really dying to get out of here, I can tell.
While you're doing that, are there any questions that you thought I was going to level at you? Is there something? Is there? I am. Yeah. Is there a bullet you were wanting to kind of dodge or throw back in my direction that I didn't ask?
Yes. Okay. So the last giveaway is an NFT card for Bitfighter, guys. This new game coming out where it's kind of like a Street Fighter, but you're going to be winning Bitcoin. Really cool concept. I will send you one of those NFTs or the card pass to mint an NFT as soon as it goes live. So check it out. Hashtag Bitfighter. Put it in the chat right now, and we'll be doing that drawing momentarily. So, I have all kinds of questions, man. My brain's been racing for 2 days. I've been trying to prep for this and get ready for it. So one of them that kind of surprised me, knowing that you are a hard hitter and that you do like to go for the soft spot, is why didn't you ask me, why did I choose to team up and take Doxxed on as a mentor instead of somebody else like the Fud Farm or James Pelton or one of these other bigger content creators that have 50 or 60,000 followers? Why did I take somebody who some would consider a smaller content creator?
Tell me, why didn't you?
I want to know why you didn't ask me the question, man. Come on. I thought you're good at this.
Well, I suppose it's never really occurred to me that the why, because I know that you both have a very good relationship with one another, and I assume it's more down to a gelling of personalities and discussion and enjoying each other's energy than it is over a calculated decision to go with one person over another. I don't think either of you are necessarily making calculated decisions just to further what you're doing within this space and make as much money as possible. I think you both want to operate from the same kind of ethos. And I think that's ethos is to help people. I think that ethos is to be there, even if it's for free. And I think you both just believe that if you keep doing what you're doing, it's going to come to you in the end.
Well said. That's probably better than my answer, honestly, man. See, and this is why I was worried about this interview. Yeah, it's like we talked about earlier, is spidey senses. I always taught my children growing up is as you're going through life, don't listen to your head. It's going to argue one way. Don't listen to your heart. It's going to argue the other way. But if you listen really carefully, there's a little tiny voice inside you. It's a whisper. That's your soul. When you hear it talk, ignore everything else and do whatever it says, regardless of how silly it seems, because that is the right answer always. Your brain will lie, your heart will lie, your soul will never lie. And somehow, some way, the cosmic law, I was drawn to Alex, and him and I started talking, and I heard that little whisper. It's like, that's a brother in arms. That's somebody I can respect, I can look up to, I can learn from, and somebody who will respect me, not just as somebody he can teach, but actually, literally a partner, a brother, somebody I can look up to, they look up to me, and we grow together. And so it was that spidey sense, that little whisper of the soul just screamed. Same thing with Cyril. These are people that when I met them, when I started to talk to them, that cosmic draw just hit. And it's like, yeah, that's a soulmate, for lack of a better term, within what we do. And so, yeah, as soon as I got that, yeah, they may not be the biggest, the most well-known, the richest, or the most popular, but they're right. And I think that's the biggest thing. Same with our investing strategies. Listen to that little voice inside of you. If something in there whispers saying, don't do it, don't do it, listen to it. I don't care what your brain says. I don't care what your heart says. That little tiny voice is what you should always listen to.
Right. Yeah. And well said. And it shows. It shows in the relationship that you both have. And it's nice to see, right? When you guys can jump into spaces and bounce off of one another. It's nice to see, even if it does make some of us a little jealous. It is nice to see. And in terms of the hard hitting questions, I like to ask hard hitting questions, but what I want to try and avoid is ad hominem, right? You don't want to attack somebody's character in order to undermine their particular argument. What you want to do is have them understand where you're coming from, and if they agree, they agree. If they don't, they don't. And juggling that in terms of these discussions, this one in particular, and discussions that I have with protocols, for me, that's the real challenge. It's making sure you can ask something that doesn't come off as too aggressive, because if you do that too early on, you can lose the audience and you can lose the person that you're speaking to, and actually you're not going to get as much of the juicy information out of them as you want to.
Agreed. And if you do that, you're actually doing a disservice to the community, because they showed up to learn, to see a debate, to see an interview with something. And if you are just coming out swinging, you're doing a disservice to the community. You're making yourself look like an idiot, and all you're going to get is hostility on the other side. So what's the benefit of that? I think on asking good, honest questions that require thought and have good pushback on both sides. And so just for the record, Matt, don't be jealous, brother, because you know what? I have definitely a connection with you as well, my man. And you are one that I respect and love you in what you do. And as far as an interviewer, you are probably the best out of everybody that I've ever heard or watched or listened to at just smoothly transitioning from topic to topic and rolling those questions in. I mean, man, I wish I had half your skill of it. You're amazing. And for that, my hat's off, brother. True respect, and definitely love you, even though I've never seen your face. And you know what? I don't have to. Now, if you ever ask me for money, yeah, I want to see your face. It's just going to work.
And then I'm going through the KYC.
Right.
Yeah.
Then, yeah,
very
if
kind
I'm giving
words.
you money, that's it.
Very humbling and very kind words. Thank you. It's a joint effort. I couldn't do what I'm doing without David and Viral Voodoo sitting in the background doing what they do. You know, they're obviously feeding me information at times. If I miss something, they ping. It's very much a collaborative effort. And in terms of what you said of working with your bonks, it's the same thing with us. It was just a kind of a nice symmetry that we had with one another, and we allow each person to work in the way that they work best. And I think that's where our strength comes from. And it allows us to then have great conversations with people. But you know, again, not to circle it back to just us giving each other compliments, but you know, you are ever improving in the Q&As and AMAs that you are hosting, and you know, your presence on screen is ever improving. I mean, like we've already discussed at the top of this, look at the studio in the background, right? You're thinking about the visuals, you're thinking about delivery, you say you take notes. I mean, that's just somebody who's wanting to improve, and that's only a good thing for this space.
And that's all we can do is improve. But I do got to smack you once real quick, Matt, because you know what?
Please do.
Viral's doxxed to me, buddy. Huh? I've seen his face. So why haven't I seen yours? Huh?
Well, I tell you what, I'll think about it. How's that?
Fair enough. Okay. I just had to throw that out there because, yes, I have seen Viral on screen him when I chatted. And yeah, it's just really funny. Did it change my perception? No, absolutely not in any way, shape, or form. I'm probably the least judgmental person on the planet that you're ever going to run into. And so it's just funny because it hasn't been a necessity. There's been that connection with us. And, you know, I think once you have mutual respect for somebody, that comes over time. And I think all of this conversation goes back to the concept of time. The more time somebody's in a space, the more you can trust them, the more you can believe in their visions, their beliefs, things like that, the more you can believe in their opinions. But it takes that time. So that's where I think the KYC is required is if you don't have the time, that's where KYC can help a little bit. Is it an end all be all? Absolutely not. Is it a solution? No, it is not. It is one more tool in the arsenal of tools that we all need to have in our journey here.
Right. And you know, in terms of KYC, as I've argued, I think how we apply KYC to this space is in ways quite flawed. I do see the value of it. Perhaps what might be an interesting angle for someone to take at some point is having a live KYC, doing that for the audience to also be able to see that process. If someone is going to put their face out there, if someone is going to have a conversation with an influencer prior to stepping onto the stage and actually going through the questions, I wonder how many of the audience members listening now and how many people watching on YouTube might really enjoy seeing that process unfold in real time, because that also gives them the power to identify what's happening live, identify how that person is translating initial information to you or your bonks, for example. And it gives them that power to make the same decision you're making when you say yes to a project or no to a project.
That's a good point. But now let me throw back at you because, like you said, there's risks involved with KYC or Doxx or something like that. And to go through that process, to look through the identity, all the different steps that are taken to verify this person really is that person, we have to dig through a lot of personal information. Who do you really think is going to be willing to go through all their different Facebook posts or high school yearbooks or whatever it was we finally hit that level of KYC with, and want all that out on the screen? Because we all have dirty laundry somewhere. Guaranteed. Everybody on the planet has dirty laundry. It's just going to happen. If not, you haven't lived.
Right.
That's what I always
Agreed.
say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, perhaps it can be tapered to omit some of that real information. But you know, as you said at one point, if you want to be a protocol lead and you want to take people's money, do you not have to roll with the punches and take some of those licks a little bit? And you know, if they are prepared to KYC and Doxx themselves, why not do it in a setting that allows others to see the process happening in real time? And of course, I'm not saying show your passport to a ton of investors that might be watching or a ton of people that might be in the audience, but just that initial conversation I think would be really fascinating to see, because I think it would give an insight, especially to those that are pro KYC, as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you come to the decision that you come to, that you do or don't like, you know, to speak to them when it comes to an AMA.
I like that. That's something we might have to do because, yeah, we could record something like that and blur out the images of the passport, just see the picture of the face, or remove some of the things just so they're not getting random emails or somebody's mailing packages of dead cats or something in their house. God forbid.
Right.
But yeah, I think that would be a very interesting journey because there can be a lot going into it. I know talking to you, Bonks, he had one with Reno where I forget what it was. It's something like 4 hours or 6 hours to verify that
Yeah.
person was that. It's like, oh man, I felt so bad for the guy. He fell asleep on camera during the AMA. It's like, wow,
Right.
that's just brutal. That's just me.
Yeah, that was a long one. And as
was.
Yvonne's is saying, that those initial conversations are fascinating, of course. I mean, a
Right.
40, he's saying it was close to 40 hours worth of
40 hours.
conversation,
Oh, damn.
which
That's
is
crazy.
just to verify his identity and ask through all the questions. I have my pushback on whether or not I think that should happen to quite that extent, but I understand why Ubonks does it, and I also understand he likes to chat, so he'll go for hours and hours, right? Which is great, and that energy, it was fully consensual. that energy is fantastic to have. You might just find that some people really want to go through the process, but are intimidated by the idea that somebody is going to fully dig into entirely all of their background. Where in reality and in real life, you can start a business and you won't have that same level of scrutiny, right? There is something to be said for how we implement KYC in this space. We appear to want to scrutinize people at a far deeper level than we would in everyday life.
Right. And we also want to scrutinize them more than we ever want ourselves scrutinized. We have no problem throwing rocks at other people. But
Right.
when they start throwing rocks at us, we start freaking out. I mean, so yeah, that's why I always I put out the daily inspirations on my other YouTube channel, the daily inspirations. Have courage, be kind, be compassionate, because we always forget every one of us lives in a glass house. So before you start throwing rocks at people, remember they're going to throw them back at you too. So be prepared for it.
Right. So one last question for you.
Sure.
And then I guess you have the draw to do, right? Somebody will have
Yes,
won
we have the
that
bit
NFT.
fighter. So you guys have
So
just a couple minutes left.
a last question for you. Where do you think the biggest failure of KYC in its current format that you use is? And then we've discussed all of its strengths, but in a roundabout way, what is the biggest pro for you?
Biggest
So
pro or con?
that's two questions.
Yeah, pick one first.
Let's go for the negative and end on the positive.
Okay. So the biggest flaw I see that I have with KYC and the doxing process I go through is that my hands are tied. I can't share it because I think in some instances, having that doxing aspect and knowing who these people are, and I'll give a great example like Doc from Collective Finance and Chrome and Cribzon. These are some amazing people. And I can't, on my end, share all the things I know about because if you guys knew half of what I knew, you'd be thoroughly impressed. I mean, it's like, you'd be like, oh my God, this is what they do. But there's certain areas that I am not allowed to say that. So I think that is one of the weaknesses is there's parts missing there. At the same, flip that coin over, same time, when somebody does dox to me and I get that spidey sense of, man, this guy's a scumbag. And I think this project's going to wreck, but I'm not going to go in and just throat punch him public. So I have the clause, I can give my honest opinion, but I'm not going to be attacking. I'm trying to be objective. So even if I think it's an absolute train wreck, you know what? I'm going to give you my honest opinion of what I feel on the data, not on my spidey instinct. So I'm kind of tied there as well. So there's goods and bads to that on both sides.
Mm. And that's fair. And it is a difficult juggling act, right? To not be over enthusiastic so that you seem like you are, because of the KYC process, fully endorsing something, because there is always going to be inherent risk in this space. And at the same time, you see someone who you quote unquote say is a scumbag. I guess it's, difficult to then not want to out that person as being a scumbag, in your opinion, because you can then protect the investors from perhaps, going down the wrong road. It is always going to be a juggling act. And that's why we want to take the approach that we're taking. It just to expand on the information that you can get in one go, in one fell swoop, a single NFT that gives you that vital bit of information, extra information that, a traditional KYC might not offer. And it then just fully gives you, or not fully, it gives you far more information than you would normally get. And you can be more informed when making a decision about what is your hard-earned money.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. It's not an end all be all. It's not going to solve the problems of the world. It's going to give you one more little tool in your arsenal to hopefully make an informed decision, because you know what? I may think somebody's a scumbag. They could be the best guy on the planet. I don't know. That's just my instincts. And so I always put in that clause and try to let everybody know that make your own decisions out there, because that's the most important always.
Right. Agreed. Shall we do the last draw?
Yes, let's do the last draw. Okay, so this is for Bitfighter NFT, guys. And if you are a winner, then like I said, take a picture, send it to me a DM, and I will get all this sorted out. Please don't scam. I know. I'm going to try and prove it out. Are we ready? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Big money, no whammies. Big money, no whammies. And by the way, you cannot mint any more of these cards. This is one that I'm giving away. A Bitfighter. Hey, he typed it wrong. Sahat Atis. Congratulations, Sahat. So
yes, yeah. Congratulations.
Shoot me a DM on that, and I will definitely get that over to you guys here in the next little bit as soon as we're done wrapping this thing up here. So, man, what is it that evolving to the KYC? So, I mean, obviously you knew this was coming. Now, was this one of the reasons why you wanted to have this suddenly? Because we've been harassing each other for weeks about this, doing this debate. So, is this kind of like your whole presentation? No, okay.
I asked you before we decided fully that this is the direction that we were going to go in. However, of course, talking about KYC, and in our case KYT, extensively internally, kind of prompted us in the direction that we want to be somewhere that people can be assured they're going to get as much information as possible. And we just feel that that is a good progression and a good direction to go in. That, you know, being able to further aid people's opinions or choices by information giving, that's the direction that we want to head. And you know, it's also, it came down to how can we improve? Like you said, we're aware that people come and listen to the Q&As, and you know what happens when we do get into that rhythm of people thinking, well, actually they're speaking to the pillars, they must be good. And that's what we want to avoid. We want it to be, and we want the pillars to be a space where people say they're speaking to the pillars. It's worth listening to because this is where things might come unstuck, or they get to showcase how good they are.
There you go. And I think that's a great mentality to go into it for. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm really excited to see what happens. And I will help any way I can. And I've also often wondered, should content creators go through like a KYC process? I mean, I don't know, a lot of things are coming out, and you start looking at this whole digital identity thing they're talking about, where maybe that will solve the whole problem if that evolves to that level. So, yeah, right. Future's definitely going to get interesting.
It is indeed. And I'm going to give a last shout out to Lamono. Thank you again for sponsoring the giveaway. They've been sitting in and listening to the debate. I hope they enjoyed it.
Awesome.
You know, like they asked, who are the king of KYCs? Well, they're certainly on the way to getting the crown, right?
Yes, they are. They're definitely the top running. And yeah, I also want to give a couple shout outs before we start wrapping this up, because I know we're
Absolutely.
close. But I want to do one special one. So if you're listening right now, David from the Pillars, buddy, thank you. You are always working tirelessly. You get almost no credit for anything. And you know what? You and Viral are always slaving away. And MadHatter's up here getting all the credit. He's looking so sexy, sounding so suave. You guys are the ones doing the work. Thank you for all the hard work that you and Mad and Viral, everybody puts into this. You make Pillars amazing. And guys, if you don't know who Pillars community is, definitely check them out. I'm going to put up their link to their Discord, and I highly recommend them. This is one place that I go to get my information. So thank you guys for putting on all that hard work.
I couldn't agree more. And now that you've given them that shine, I'm going to kick them immediately. So let me just find their names.
Dude, get them out of here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You said it perfectly. You know, without them, there would be no Pillars. So, and there would be no MadHatter sitting on a stage doing any kind of Q&A. So yeah, you're spot on.
Absolutely. And Lamono, thank you so much for giving the $100 away in the Discord. Now, somebody asked earlier on YouTube here, said, hey, have you given the $100 away? You know, the $100 was on the Discord. The NFTs was on YouTube, and you could be on both and you could win both. So if I messed up my announcement earlier, I think David was giving me a hard time. He's like, that's not how I read your thing. No, I'm not giving away $100, and I'm sorry if that was misconfused. I did try to correct that in the very beginning. Hopefully you didn't miss it. But yes, they were two separate ones, and that was totally generously donated by Lamono. Thank you guys so very much for that.
Serenity, it's been an absolute blast. I've enjoyed it. The time has absolutely flown. It was a fascinating discussion, and we've got plenty of meat to go and tuck into
Okay.
in terms of internal discussions. And certainly, I'm going to be reaching out to some people just for some little bits of advice. You know how you guys do your
Oh
process,
yeah.
and you know, we will see what we can do in terms of improving the space.
Perfect. And Matt, thank you so much for taking the time, buddy. I know for you, this is a very long event. I mean, we've been at pushing almost 3 hours. It's getting close. And so this has been absolutely a blast. We've gone down all these rabbit holes. And thank you to all the community members for taking the time to joining us, having fun. Because really, in the end, I'm not even sure we came up with an answer to the debate. We just know that we had a lot of fun doing it. So thank you all, because none of us would have anything to do if it weren't for you guys in the community, in the audience, you know, laughing, sharing, and being on this journey with us. So thank you, everybody. And Matt, thank you, buddy, so much for taking time. I'm sure it's late at night for you.
It is. It is. It's coming up to midnight. So yeah. But you know what? Time really has flown. It's been great. No, we didn't come to a conclusion in that respect, but that's part of the joy of the space. And, you know, let's face it, you don't have to come to a central conclusion in order to either agree with some of the ideas that have been thrown out, and hopefully some people have some ideas on whether or not they think KYC or KYT is the way forward, and you know, they can give some input on what they'd like to see from these kind of KYCs, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, any input you guys have, any ideas, please share them, whether it's in my Discord on Down Home Crypto, it's my YouTube, it's in the Pillars. I guarantee we want to hear from you. We want to learn. Yabong wants to hear from you. You know, Cyril, everybody wants to hear from you. So please share your ideas. And you know what? There's no such thing as a stupid question, just the ones you don't ask. So yeah, ask questions because you are helping us. So Matt, thank you so much, brother, for your time, my man. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thank you so much. You take care, dude.
You too, bud. Have a good night, everybody. We'll catch you next time.